Chapter 114. No one expected that an ordinary actual combat lesson would turn into such a situation. Several of the most promising experts in the class besieged the tutor. The headmaster, the director of the teaching office, the director of the political department, and other senior officials were present at the same time. Yang Mengjiang, who was also a senior official of the school, apologized to a freshman in person. What was even more unexpected was that Yang Mengjiang actually rejected him and even kicked him in the same way that Yang Mengjiang did earlier. Although he was injured, the strength and speed of the wind and thunder veins were terrifying. Especially in terms of strength, Li Tianlan was in the chi-controlling realm, but his pure strength was not inferior to that of an expert in the fire-flaming realm. Yang Mengjiang had been seriously injured by the siege. Under Li Tianlan's kick, his body flew back nearly 20 meters and landed in front of Xianxia, coughing up blood. For a moment, he couldn't even move. "I don't accept it." His calm and gentle voice resounded throughout the entire venue, without the slightest bit of anger or pleasure, but everyone who heard this sentence felt their scalps go numb for no reason. This kid was really too strong-willed. Xianxia's eyes flashed with viciousness and resentment. She squatted down slightly, helped Yang Mengjiang up, and handed him to the assistant beside her. When she straightened up again, she had a gentle and calm smile on her face. What Mr. Yang did today was really inappropriate. She paused, and her voice became softer and softer. She whispered, "The school will discuss a punishment decision as soon as possible. I don't know if you are satisfied with this explanation, Tianlan?" "I'm not satisfied," Li Tianlan said with a smile. He barely suppressed his injury and moved his body. There was suddenly a strong fighting will like a raging fire in his pupils. "What do you want, Tianlan?" Xianxia narrowed her eyes and said in a feminine tone, but her fingers unconsciously contracted. This was her almost instinctive action every time she wanted to kill someone. Today's matter involved the Wang family of Beihai, Mount Shu, and Jade Pool, and the academics and Sai City. This seemed to be a small matter, but if it was not handled well, it would become extremely troublesome. Therefore, Xianxia had made up her mind to compromise for the time being. After this matter was over, she still had ways to deal with Li Tianlan. "I just said I'm not satisfied. What can I do?" Li Tianlan chuckled and said, "There are some things that you can't do without strength, no matter how unwilling you are. Director Gu, am I right?" He calmly glanced around and continued, "That's why I just want to continue my lessons. However, there's no need to trouble Teacher Yang to name names. Since it's an actual combat class that can strengthen one's combat strength and allow one to get to know one another better, then let's be more straightforward. Among the freshmen, there are a few that I want to challenge, so I hope that the teachers can fulfill my wish." Xianxia's expression changed slightly, and she subconsciously glanced in the direction of Yulan. Her soft eyes gradually turned cold, and there was a hint of threat in her eyes. Li Tianlan's smile was gentle and gentle like a breeze, but there was a hint of undisguised killing intent in his eyes when he looked at Xianxia. Their gazes collided in the air, and it was a tit-for-tat. In the gloomy sky, the atmosphere suddenly became bleak. "Tianlan, do you insist?" Xianxia asked slowly. Her words could be interpreted as a threat, but they could also be interpreted as her last warning. Li Tianlan stopped talking nonsense. He held Wang Yuedong's hand and walked back to the platform step by step with firm steps. "Tianlan, you're injured." Zhuang Huayang frowned slightly. He didn't know how serious Li Tianlan's injury was, but in this case, since he was injured, it was better not to fight. He could vent his anger at any time. "It's okay," Li Tianlan said without looking back. Xianxia glanced at Li Tianlan coldly, then looked at Zhuang Huayang and said softly, "Please make a decision, headmaster." "I agree." Before Zhuang Huayang could speak, the enchantress made her attitude clear. "I have no objection either." Yi Fengqing looked at Li Tianlan's figure on the platform with interest, and the appreciation in his eyes grew stronger. Zhuang Huayang glanced at Tribulation beside him, intentionally or unintentionally. Tribulation didn't say a word. His figure gradually became distorted and illusory. A black shadow appeared in front of Zhuang Huayang, but he himself had already left the #1 training ground. Was this a tacit agreement? Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes and nodded. That's it. Tianlan, who do you want to challenge? Li Tianlan had already stepped onto the platform. On the 3-meter-high platform, in the gloomy sky, Li Tianlan's figure seemed very small, but it was extremely clear, clearly reflected in everyone's sight. Li Tianlan pointed in a direction. In the direction he pointed, most of the freshmen he pointed at scattered instinctively, and a small group close together appeared in everyone's sight. In the crowd, Gu Yulan stared at Li Tianlan's finger pointing at her. She pursed her red lips and said nothing, but her eyes were full of killing intent. Lu Dongyu, who was also pointed at, remained calm. Su Yunzong, the most irascible one, suddenly clenched his fist and said in a ferocious tone, "I'll go and meet him." So, Gu Yulan said in a flat tone, "Of course you'll go, but not now." Her eyes turned slightly and finally stopped on several ice-condensing realm experts on the periphery. She said in a soft and sweet voice, "You guys go up. Don't rush to finish the fight quickly. Drag him with all your might and consume his strength." Several ice-condensing realm experts from the flames of war looked pale. They looked at each other and subconsciously looked at Lu Dongyu. Lu Dongyu said with a dull face, "The one being challenged, come up." Zhuang Huayang's voice sounded. As a headmaster, he personally presided over an actual combat lesson. This lesson was of a high standard. An ice-condensing realm expert stepped forward. His face was pale. Standing in front of Li Tianlan, he opened his mouth and said slowly, "My name is..." Before he finished his words, Li Tianlan's figure had directly appeared in front of him. He punched. The human emperor did not show up. Li Tianlan's joints all over his body shook wildly. He concentrated all his strength into one punch and hit the opponent's chest hard. On the platform, all the air shook violently and then twisted wildly. In the gloomy and cold air, there seemed to be a sudden wind, fierce and overbearing. The ice-condensing realm expert who had just stepped onto the platform suddenly changed his expression. He subconsciously crossed his hands in front of his chest. Li Tianlan's punch came across the air. Cruel and merciless? A trace of ferocity flashed in his eyes. Endless hostility filled his heart and spread all over his body. "I'll show you what is really cruel and merciless." Bang! The crazy power went through his arms and hit his chest. On the platform, which was covered by the twisted air and looked a little fuzzy, a low but dull and desperate scream accompanied by the sound of bones breaking rang out. The ice-condensing realm expert from the flames of war had just stepped onto the platform and was blown off the platform like a sandbag. The punch hit his chest through his arms, but a lot of blood burst out of his back. The lonely and desperate figure crossed the platform and fell heavily in front of Gu Yunxia. He twitched twice and then stopped moving. Li Tianlan said calmly. Gu Yunxia finally could not keep the smile on her face. Her expression became extremely gloomy. An ice-condensing realm expert was nothing in Kunlun City. But the flames of war, whether in the Sky Academy or in Kunlun City, was a force of Kunlun City. Li Tianlan deliberately punched an elite of the flames of war in front of him. Gu Yunxia felt as if someone had slapped her in the face. It was a burning pain. She squatted down and checked the injury of the injured person. She suddenly raised her head, and her eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Under the punch, all the bones of the student in front of her had been completely broken, and his internal organs were almost completely destroyed. With such an injury, he would not die as long as he was treated in time. But it would be extremely difficult for him to recover. Li Tianlan did not kill anyone in the actual combat lesson. But what was the difference between such a method and killing him? Cruel and merciless, Gu Yunxia thought of Yang Mingjiang's comment. She gritted her teeth and said nothing. Bang! On the platform, Li Tianlan moved like a dragon. The second elite of the flames of war had just stood firm when Li Tianlan kicked him in the abdomen again. A lot of blood burst out of his body like a blood mist. His body fell down the platform along the same trajectory and fell beside Gu Yunxia again. Headmaster! Seeing all this with his own eyes, Yang Mingjiang's lips trembled, and stars flashed before his eyes. There was no doubt that this was Li Tianlan's most powerful counterattack to his words of being cruel and merciless. Li Tianlan only broke his opponent's arm with one punch in the first battle. How was that cruel and merciless? In front of him, he only used one move to completely destroy his opponent in one move. Such a style was really cruel and merciless. Go on, Li Tianlan said softly, with a mellow and gentle smile. Headmaster, look at what he is doing. These are all elites of our Kunlun city? No, the Sky Academy. Headmaster, this guy should be killed. Yang Mingjiang shouted in a trembling voice. Because of extreme anger, his dark face had turned blood red. All your Kunlun city? Did he finally let it slip? Zhuang Huayang's eyes turned cold. He took a deep look at Yang Mingjiang and said casually, Tianlan, be careful. Li Tianlan nodded and smiled, but in his mind he thought of Lu Xiuwei, who had died in his hands, Yang Mingjiang's kick just now, and Kunlun City. It was an organization that took it for granted to bully others and said that the other party should be killed when being bullied. What a great power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan smiled and looked at his opponent who walked to the high platform with an uneasy face. His figure flashed and he kicked again. Bang! The same bloody mist broke out in the sky. But this time, the opponent did not fly out of the high platform. Li Tianlan's foot fell on him, and all the power exploded in his body in an instant. There was a thud. His body fell to the ground and he died on the spot. Li Tianlan looked at Yang Mingjiang with a playful look in his eyes. It was a look that Yang Mingjiang was very familiar with. Just now, he looked at Li Tianlan with this kind of look, provocative and cruel. Yang Mingjiang spat out another mouthful of blood and was on the verge of collapse. Li Tianlan kicked the body in front of him off the high platform and continued, Who else? The corner of Gu Yunxia's mouth moved. She forced herself to swallow the blood that gushed out of her throat, turned silently, and said coldly, Let's go. With the support of the headmaster, Li Tianlan was unscrupulous. Gu Yunxia didn't want to see what would happen next. She turned around, asked her assistant to support Yang Mingjiang, and left directly. Director Gu. On the high platform, Li Tianlan suddenly spoke in a flat voice. Gu Yunxia suddenly turned around, and her killing intent soared. She said coldly, What's the matter? Nothing. Li Tianlan burst out laughing and said in a clear and bright voice, Have I ever told you that you're so ugly, just like an old witch? Young and vigorous, young and frivolous. Ha! Beside Zhuang Huayang, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded. Yi Fengcheng looked at Li Tianlan with appreciation and said, Well said, Tianlan. Based on what you said, when your injury is healed, I must drink with you. Yi Fengcheng was called a madman in Yuzhou. He was arrogant and unruly. If it weren't for his fearlessness, he wouldn't have come to the Sky Academy to be a director of the political department. This position seemed to be prominent, but compared with the power of the Yi family, it was almost equivalent to being sent to the frontier. Gu Yunxia stood there stiffly. After 5 minutes, she took a deep look at Li Tianlan, turned around, and left. Li Tianlan glanced at his back, then turned around and asked Gu Yulan, Who else? I'll do it. Su Yunzong suddenly roared. Ignoring Gu Yulan's eyes, he stepped toward the high platform step by step. Flames rose from his body. At this moment, Su Yunzong was like a sun, scorching and cruel. He stepped onto the high platform. Without a word, he roared and rushed directly to Li Tianlan. He completely condensed the innate divine power given to him by the thunder vein. In the flames, the whole high platform shook wildly as he sprinted. He moved faster and faster, like a giant beast. The air in front of Li Tianlan was completely twisted. In a trance, he seemed to be pushing a side of the world forward. He controlled the air to form the wind. The wind suddenly rose. The flames were blown away by the wind. The two approached each other in an instant. What appeared in front of Su Yunzong was also a tightly clenched iron fist. Su Yunzong roared and raised his hand to meet the fist without hesitation. Crack! Their fists retracted as soon as they touched. Li Tianlan suddenly took a step forward. The twisted air whistled wildly around him. Li Tianlan took the opportunity to turn around and hit Su Yunzong's chest hard with his elbow. Bang! Su Yunzong suffered a heavy blow, but he refused to retreat. The air around him had turned into blades of wind. In an instant, his burly body was covered in blood. But the expression on his face grew more and more ferocious. He grabbed Li Tianlan's arm and roared. With a furious roar, he swung Li Tianlan's body up and flung him hard. Boom! Li Tianlan's body rubbed against the ground, leaving a shocking trail of blood. He hit the iron railings around the high platform. The railings, which were surrounded by thick and long steel bars, were instantly deformed. Li Tianlan spat out a mouthful of blood, but he continued to rush forward without hesitation. Su Yunzong, who was also covered in blood, held a flaming long saber in his hand. The flames around him bloomed to the extreme, and he slashed at Li Tianlan. 3 Elements' final hit. It was the core unique skill of Kunlun City, the 10 skills of true martial arts. The 10th skill was known as the strongest in the invincible realm, and the other 9 skills were also outstanding in each realm. The human emperor in Li Tianlan's hand stretched out. In the silver flowing light, he held a long spear. The spear smashed hard on the ground. Boom! The 3-meter-high high platform, which was extremely solid with a large number of steel bars and concrete, suddenly shook. On the floor, countless dust and gravel mixed with steel bars flew out and hit Su Yunzong. Su Yunzong waved his saber wildly, destroying everything. Li Tianlan, who was faster than him, took advantage of the length of the weapon and stabbed his spear directly at Su Yunzong's chest. The sound was ear-piercing. Li Tianlan's figure seemed to have completely melted into the air, blurring. Only the silver spear shone brightly and moved forward. Su Yunzong could only retreat. One advanced, and the other retreated. The distance of more than 10 meters was covered in a flash. Su Yunzong's huge body hit the railings on the edge of the high platform, and his whole body turned quickly against the railings. The silver spear stabbed into the gap between the railings. Before Su Yunzong could fight back, Li Tianlan's silver spear suddenly rose. Bang! Under the huge force, the silver spear directly smashed the steel railings. Dust flew up from the edge of the high platform, and all the steel bars were broken into countless pieces in an instant, shooting off the platform. Fierce and violent. A chi-controlling realm martial artist fighting against a fire-flaming realm martial artist. Li Tianlan's eyes were dark, and he seemed to have gone completely crazy. The silver spear whistled and danced in the flames and twisted air. The whole high platform was in danger in the battle between the two. Su Yunzong, who was dodging in a panic, looked furious. The long saber in his hand disappeared, and in an instant, the flames scattered. The 4th move of the 10 skills of true martial arts. 4 moves to 1. Watch out! Under the platform, Gu Yulan, who was supposed to be full of confidence, suddenly narrowed her eyes and gave a warning. In a place that no one noticed, a figure that was exactly the same as Li Tianlan suddenly appeared behind Su Yunzong. It was a vivid imitation of Li Tianlan. The flames of 4 moves to 1 gathered in front of Su Yunzong and instantly surrounded Li Tianlan. The air in front of him fluctuated slightly. Li Tianlan stood quietly, motionless. But in everyone's sight, Li Tianlan had already switched places with the shadow. He raised his spear and whistled down. The shadow in front of Su Yunzong was swallowed by the flames and instantly disappeared. The silver spear whistled all over the sky and hit Su Yunzong's head without reservation. Boom! The high platform, which was on the verge of collapse, collapsed with a loud bang in the last shot. In the smoke and snow mist, Su Yunzong's body completely collapsed under the spear. Only flesh and blood flew all over the sky, and he died without a whole body. Cruel and ruthless. When the extreme violence was deduced to the extreme, it was an art that was enough to make everyone's scalp numb and heart tremble. An art that was cruel and bloody to the extreme. The smoke and dust drifted. In the ruins of the high platform, only Li Tianlan's voice continued to ring. Who else? On this day. In the first actual combat lesson since the beginning of the Sky Academy. Yang Mengjiang, the tutor of the actual combat lesson, was seriously injured. 2 people died and 2 were seriously injured in the class. 4 people were removed from the class. The flames of war, which had been awe-inspiring in the Sky Academy last time, was almost gone. In Li Tianlan's seemingly calm but insolent momentum was close to baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. Su Yunzong, a fire-flaming realm expert and a young core disciple of Kunlun City, died. Gu Yulan. Chapter 115. Su Yunzong died in the battle. The flames of war was almost removed from the Sky Academy. Now that things had escalated to this point, the actual combat class that was halfway through was naturally left unsettled. After the bodies and the wounded were carried away, Zhuang Huayang dismissed the team and personally sent Li Tianlan back to the dormitory. He was not afraid that Gu Yunxia and others would attack Li Tianlan. He did this to express his attitude to the whole academy. Li Tianlan's face grew paler, but after restraining his killing intent, his aura had completely stabilized. The benefits brought to him by that set of immortality potion were almost unimaginable. As soon as the injury broke out in his body, the vitality locked by the longevity lock in his body began to surge and break through the blockage, quickly healing his injury. After the fierce battle, although his injury could not be said to be completely healed, it was basically not a big problem. His body, which originally needed a month to recuperate, now seemed to be completely better in a week at most. Even Li Tianlan himself was a little stunned by such an effect. The most precious treasure of the Wang family of Beihai was just like their unique skill. Its effect could be said to be against the natural order. In contrast, Wang Yuedong's state could be said to be the worst. Although the process of upgrading from the peak of the ice-condensing realm was very short, her consumption was unimaginable. The so-called consumption of potential was temporarily unfathomable, but the consumption of physical strength and spirit was extremely obvious. As soon as she returned to the dormitory, she put her arms around Li Tianlan's waist, muttered that she was sleepy, and then directly closed her eyes behind Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan found it funny but also felt distressed. He could borrow the power of the ice-condensing realm or even the fire-flaming realm when he was in the chi-controlling realm because he had reached that realm before. But Wang Yuetong did not recultivate. Her improvement was completely using the combat strength that should not have belonged to her. In doing so, she needed to pay a much higher price than Li Tianlan. Now Wang Yuetong was almost in a state of half coma and half sleep, and no one knew how long she would rest this time. He carefully carried Wang Yuetong into the bedroom, put her body on the bed, and carefully covered her with the quilt. Wang Yuetong, who was out of Li Tianlan's arms, seemed to move a little uneasily. Her little hands subconsciously grasped the quilt, and she slowly calmed down. Appreciating the little princess's quiet and delicate sleeping posture, Li Tianlan's heart was filled with tenderness. He lowered his head and kissed Wang Yuetong's face gently. Then he straightened up and walked out of the bedroom. In the living room, Li Beidian was standing beside Zhuang Huayang and bragging. Li Tianlan didn't know what he had said before. When he came out, Li Beidian was already halfway through his speech. I was by Tianlan's side at that time. Headmaster, you didn't see it at that time. Tianlan just raised the brush and waved it. Did you see that? The 3 words, East Emperor Palace, were written in one go. The whole living room was filled with sword energy, including the floor, the walls, and the furniture. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Let me tell you. Cough. Li Tianlan couldn't bear it anymore. He coughed and interrupted Li Beidian's serious bragging. It was fine if Li Beidian exaggerated a little occasionally. But Li Beidian didn't know him. He wrote the 3 words, East Emperor Palace, for nearly a day, but Li Beidian wrote it in one go. It was outrageous. However, Zhuang Huayang didn't seem to pay attention to what Li Beidian said. He just looked at the wall covered with sword marks with a calm expression. The sword marks filled with pure sword essence were like a beautiful painting in his eyes. It was so beautiful that it fascinated him. Did you do it? Zhuang Huayang glanced at Li Tianlan, who walked out of the bedroom, and said with a smile. Li Tianlan braced himself and said calmly, I'm going to talk to the headmaster about this. These furniture need to be changed. I still have credits here. It should be enough to deduct. Zhuang Huayang thought for a while and said slowly, I won't deduct credits. The college will help you change the furniture, but I hope the wall will remain the same. These sword marks, just stay here. Li Tianlan was stunned and looked at Zhuang Huayang. Zhuang Huayang didn't look at Li Tianlan but still looked at the countless sword marks on the wall. He said softly, "This is a treasure, Ton. The sword energy left here may disappear soon, but the pure sword intent will always exist. After you graduate, if someone lives in your dormitory and looks at these sword marks, they can almost be said to be your students if they become successful in the future. Just leave the wall like this. The Sky Academy also needs such a special dormitory." Li Tianlan nodded casually. He was not interested in being a student for the time being. With his current realm at the peak of the Qi-controlling realm, he was really not qualified to be someone else's teacher. The sword intent on the surrounding walls was pure, but it wouldn't reveal the unique skills of the Li family. Since he could keep it without deducting credits, he naturally wouldn't have any objection. Zhuang Huayang's eyes fell on the plaque in front of him again. He stared at the 3 words that even stung his eyes when he first saw them. He said softly, "East Emperor Palace? Is this the name of your team?" Li Tianlan said yes. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked calmly, "Headmaster, is there anything wrong with this name?" "It's good." Zhuang Huayang smiled and said, "It sounds a little bold." Li Tianlan looked at his expression seriously. He asked again, "Headmaster, haven't you heard of the name East Emperor?" Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. When he saw Li Tianlan's serious face, he suddenly froze. "I haven't heard of it." Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said, "I know a mythical figure called East Emperor Tai." "Do you mean this East Emperor has a background? How can the heavenly son of Zhongzhou State in recent decades have no background?" Li Tianlan said flatly, "His name is Dongqing Huangtu." He didn't know why he was so attached to this name. Every time he thought of this name with infinite contradictions and mysteries, he would subconsciously figure it out. Maybe it was because of the notebook in Qin Weibai's hand. Or maybe it was because of Qin Weibai's sad and helpless eyes when she mentioned this name. Heavenly Son? Zhuang Huayang raised his eyebrows in surprise. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said slowly, "How can there be any heavenly son in recent decades? This word is not used casually. Even if others use this word, they will add some modifiers in front of it. For example, Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan are known as young heavenly sons. The word young is the most important. This generation's Wang Shengxiao, the previous generation's Tribulation, and the previous generation's Wang Tianzong can only be regarded as people with the potential to become heavenly sons. For hundreds of years, only the ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai can be called a heavenly son." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly. His eyes were complicated, but he still didn't give up and asked, "Headmaster, haven't you heard of Dongqing Huangtu? Sounds like a member of the Dongqing family?" Zhuang Huayang looked at Li Tianlan strangely and said, "I haven't heard of him." Li Tianlan was silent. Zhuang Huayang was an old fox at his age. What he thought and even the emotions on the surface were not what he could figure out now. He couldn't tell whether Zhuang Huayang was telling the truth or not. If what he said wasn't true, then what kind of secret was hidden behind the name Dongqing Huangtu that people like Zhuang Huayang still didn't want to talk about it after so many years after his death? A dignified heaven's chosen one, yet he was unknown. How ironic was that? But if what he said was true, what did that mean? Zhuang Huayang, who was nearly 70 years old, was a general of Zhongzhou State, but he hadn't even heard of Dongqing Huangtu's name. If that was the truth, that could only mean one thing. Dongqing Huangtu didn't exist. "Tianlan?" Zhuang Huayang frowned and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Li Tianlan shook his head, feeling complicated. "It's good that you're fine. Take care of yourself. I suggest you take some Chinese medicine. As for gene potions like healing, you can only use them for emergencies. Take as little as you can." Zhuang Huayang glanced at Li Tianlan and said, "I'm going to Yuzhou soon. Let's talk about other things when I come back." Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed. Zhuang Huayang going to Yuzhou? At this time, it was most likely that he went to Yuzhou for the murder of Gu Changjiang. An expert at the level of governor was killed in his own country, which was enough to cause a sensation in the whole Zhongzhou state. So even if he knew that Zhuang Huayang had nothing to do with this trip, Li Tianlan still felt a little nervous subconsciously. "I'm fine." Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said with a light smile. Li Tianlan nodded slightly and didn't say much. Zhuang Huayang turned around and was about to leave. He glanced around casually and happened to see Yu Qingyan standing in the corner. Yu Qingyan's pretty face was pale, and she still stood there in a daze, as if she was lost in thought. "Qingyan, are you all right?" Zhuang Huayang asked with concern. He and Yu Donglai were old friends for many years. Now that Yu Donglai handed his granddaughter to him, he must fulfill his responsibility. "I'm fine." Yu Qingyan became alert, shook her head in a panic, and stammered, "I'm going to call Grandpa." She turned around and trotted straight to the bedroom. Zhuang Huayang smiled thoughtfully and left quickly. In the bedroom, Yu Qingyan sat on the bed, holding the phone nervously, waiting for the call to be connected. The phone rang twice. Yu Donglai's kind and soft voice sounded, which made Yu Qingyan calm down. "Qingyan? What's wrong? You just left and you miss Grandpa?" "Grandpa." Yu Qingyan's inner nervousness gradually disappeared, but she still stammered. "What's wrong? Did someone bully you? Where's Tonglun? Give him the phone." Yu Qingyan suddenly became nervous. He loved this precious granddaughter from the bottom of his heart and was afraid that she would be wronged. If he didn't spoil her, Yu Qingyan might have a different character today. No. Yu Qingyan took a deep breath and said softly, "Grandpa, Yang Mengjiang bullied brotherly. In the class just now, Sister Yuatong led us to seriously injure Yang Mengjiang." At the other end of the phone, Yu Donglai's breath paused and he said softly, And then, Yu Qingyan hesitated, lowered her voice again, and said in a trembling voice, "And then I used a drop of cardinal blood." The other end of the phone suddenly fell into a dead silence. Cardinal. This was something that only he and Yu Qingyan knew. Over the years, Yu Donglai had spent more time and energy on the linnet than on Yu Qingyan. In 20 years, the linnet had taken shape. If it evolved once with external forces, it would become a vermilion bird. This was the most poisonous thing in the world. Its toxicity was as fierce as raging fire and could be called unparalleled in the world. A drop of cardinal blood. Yu Donglai pondered for a long time before he took a deep breath and said gently, "It's okay. Qingyan, you did the right thing. Don't worry." His voice was still old and tired, but this time, there was a hint of pride in it. Yu Qingyan nodded her little head hard and said yes. "Bastard, this bastard, I must kill him, kill him." In the director's office, Gu Yunxia's assistant helped Yang Mengjiang to sit on the sofa. Yang Mengjiang, who had been silent all the way, finally couldn't help but roar angrily after entering the office. Gu Yunxia stood in front of the window and took a deep breath before she slowly turned around and sighed. "Mengjiang, this time we were careless. Who could have thought that Wang Yuatong, Li Beidian, and Ning Chenqing would risk their lives for that guy? It seems that their relationship is not simple. Wang Yuatong fell in love with him in just a few days. This is the most unexpected thing." Yang Mengjiang pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and took a big puff. The smoke entered his lungs. Yang Mengjiang was so angry that he only felt a burning heat all over his body. He shook his head in annoyance and did not speak. "Let's find another chance later. This time we can't just let it go, but we have to pay attention to the way in the future." Gu Yunxia pondered and said word by word, "Outside the Sky Academy, that guy is a nonentity. But at least in the academy, he has now become a figure that can't be ignored. We can't continue to fight on a small scale. Next time we take action, we must be clean and neat and don't leave any evidence." Yang Mengjiang took a big puff of the cigarette and nodded. The burning feeling on his body was getting stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, he was sweating all over. Gu Yunxia, who knew his bad temper, only thought that he was angry and didn't think much about it. She took out her mobile phone and said with a smile, "Take a seat first. I'll go to the lounge to call the governor." Yang Mengjiang nodded and watched Gu Yunxia's back disappear. He lit another cigarette. The heat spread from the soles of his feet and kept rising, surpassing his chest and abdomen. The rolling heat waves rushed straight to his brain. Yang Mengjiang even felt that his body was on fire. He put out the cigarette, looked at Gu Yunxia's assistant, and frowned. "Do you have water?" "I want ice." "Yes," the assistant said in a soft voice. She was also a freshman who graduated from the Sky Academy. In that year, she was also a famous beauty. After graduating and staying at the school, she followed Gu Yunxia and naturally became a bargaining chip for Gu Yunxia to win over some of her confidants. Not only Yang Mengjiang, but even many promising ordinary male teachers had tasted her. "There's a refrigerator in the lounge. I'll get you some water." The assistant smiled charmingly and turned to the lounge. "This slut." Yang Mengjiang stared at the assistant's swaying soft buttocks with fiery eyes, and his heart was getting hotter and hotter. It was on fire. Yang Mengjiang only felt that the fire in his body was getting stronger and stronger, and he could hardly suppress it. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he didn't make a sound for a while. Yang Mengjiang's face changed, and he finally realized that there was something wrong with the heat in his body. He subconsciously put his hand into his mouth, and his face instantly became desperate and pale. In a short time, the tongue in his mouth had disappeared, and even his teeth were melting rapidly. The burning heat instantly turned into a big fire. It was really on fire. The strange green flame instantly sprang out of his body and instantly spread all over his body. Yang Mengjiang's face twisted, and his body twitched in the flame, but he couldn't even make a sound. In a very short time, his body twitched more and more weakly, and finally stopped moving, and then burned rapidly with the sofa. Crack! The door of the lounge was pulled open. The assistant, who was smiling charmingly and even a little slutty, walked out of the lounge with a bottle of ice water. She glanced in the direction of the sofa and suddenly froze. In the office, Yang Mengjiang's figure had disappeared, and with him, the whole sofa disappeared. The place was empty, as if nothing had ever existed. The secretary was stunned, turned around subconsciously, and hurried back to the lounge. In the lounge, Gu Yunxia looked serious and silently put down the phone. The assistant held the water tightly in her hand and said nervously, "Director, Mr. Yang has left, and he stole our sofa." "Yang Mengjiang? Stole the sofa?" Gu Yunxia looked puzzled, stared at the assistant strangely, and said, "What are you talking about?" Gu Yunxia soon understood that the assistant was not talking nonsense. On this day, a supernatural disappearance occurred in the Sky Academy. Yang Mengjiang, the leader of the course group of the practical lesson of the academy, mysteriously disappeared in Gu Yunxia's office. He seemed to disappear out of thin air, with a sofa, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Gu Yunxia asked everyone and even adjusted the surveillance, but she didn't find Yang Mengjiang leaving, nor did she find him leaving with the sofa. It was in this office that Yang Mengjiang disappeared without warning and without a trace. Everyone in the entire Sky Academy was confused, and no one knew what happened. In the evening of the same day, Yuzhou City, in the Hidden Dragon Sea, the power center of Zhongzhou State, President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou State personally convened a meeting of the decision-making committee. Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, Fan Tianyin, the Minister of Security of Zhongzhou State, was invited to attend the meeting. Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, who rarely attended such meetings, attended the meeting. The meeting discussed the death of Gu Changjiang, the director of Huading's Special Operations Bureau. Gu Xingyun took out the video. At the place where Gu Changjiang last disappeared, Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Praetorian Corps, and Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, appeared on the scene respectively. Gu Changjiang's body was not found, but the roughly estimated time of death was very consistent with the time when Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huayang appeared. The entire decision-making committee was waiting for the explanation of the two. Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huayang seriously clarified themselves one by one. Zhong Yongming, the top leader of Huading, was also a member of the decision-making committee. Although he was a little reluctant, he still proved that on the day they met, neither Dongqing Wudi nor Zhuang Huayang had any conflict with Gu Changjiang. It was just that Qin Weibai, the second in command of Samsara, had some unpleasantness with Gu Changjiang. This explanation was easily accepted by everyone. After all, whether it was Gu Changjiang, Zhuang Huayang, or Dongqing Wudi, they were all senior officials of Zhongzhou state. Not to mention that they did not have conflicts. Even if they did have conflicts, they would not be killed. Some basic rules were that everyone must abide by. So everyone's attention was focused in another direction. The time of Gu Changjiang's death was unclear, and the range of his death was relatively large. During this relatively long period of time, there was also another person who caught people's attention on the path that Gu Changjiang had taken. Moreover, this person definitely had the means to kill Gu Changjiang silently. The second master of the Jiang family of South America, Jiang Chenyan. Since a huge foreign force was involved, the tone of the people at the meeting was a little cautious. Finally, after Gu Xingyun said that he would investigate it clearly, the matter seemed to come to an end for the time being. But Gu Xingyun stopped blaming for the time being, and someone opened fire on Kunlun City. At the meeting of the highest level of the decision-making committee of the empire, Zhuang Huayang, in front of several directors and all the members, bluntly said that the atmosphere inside the Sky Academy was now very unhealthy, with crooked ways and foul atmosphere everywhere. In Gu Xingyun's gloomy face, Zhuang Huayang directly named Gu Yunxia. He thought that Gu Yunxia was suspected of fanning evil winds. His position was ambiguous, he ignored the overall situation, and he would not unite his colleagues. He almost belittled Gu Yunxia as useless. At the same time, he also cited that during the entrance maneuver, Lu Xiuwei attacked the freshmen, and in the actual combat lesson, the teachers targeted the freshmen. Fan Tianyin, the Minister of Security of Zhongzhou State and a cadre of the Southeast Group, also said that he had received a call from his son, Fan Haoyu. It was said that Fan Haoyu was now very insecure in the Sky Academy. Driven by some school leaders with ambiguous positions, he even felt that he was living under the terrible pressure of Kunlun City, not in the Sky Academy. General Dongqing Wudi, who had been holding back his anger because of the explanation, flew into a rage and said that there was something wrong with the environment of the Sky Academy. Even Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster, was responsible. He suggested that all Gu Yunxia's posts in the Sky Academy be revoked. In the face of Gu Xingyun, the famous god of massacre of Zhongzhou State pointed out the duties of the Sky Academy without hesitation. It was to cultivate talents in the special warfare system and the military system for Zhongzhou State, not to raise dogs for Kunlun City. Yi Dongxing, one of the leaders of the Southeast Group and known as the God of Army, also expressed his support for Dongqing Wudi with a cold face. The academics, the giant group, and the Wang family of Beihai. Because of a little thing that no one would notice at this time, the three parties reprimanded Gu Yunxia's behavior with harsh words, as if they had made an appointment. It was almost equivalent to pointing at the nose and rebuking Kunlun City for having bad intentions. A director of the Prince Group said a few words for Kunlun City in a perfunctory way, which could be regarded as a way to smooth things over. In the face of the storm of reprimands, Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, was expressionless all the time, as still as a mountain. But everyone at the meeting could see the flash of anger in his eyes. A storm suddenly arose in the conference room. The sky over Yuzhou City was covered with haze. Chapter 116. Tender yellow leaves poked out of the willows, green pines and cypresses appeared among the dense needles, buds sprouted on the crabapple trees, and the poplar trees grew taller and taller. The spring breeze swept over the lake, trees, pavilions, and lawns. The hidden dragon sea in early spring was picturesque, full of vitality. The spring scenery was boundless and beautiful. The hidden dragon sea was the general name of the hidden sea and the dragon sea. It was said to be a sea, but in fact, it was just a small lake with clear water. In the center of power of Zhongzhou State, which was full of solemnity and solemnity, this lake, which was called a sea, could be said to be the softest place. Boating on the lake, even the greatest pressure seemed to disappear without a trace. In the morning, at the junction of the hidden sea and the dragon sea, two quaint boats drifted aimlessly with the waves. Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, known as the war god of Zhongzhou State, sat in the boat with a fishing rod in his hand, looking calm and gentle. Gu Xingyun looked like he was in his 50s, with gray hair at the temples and an elegant appearance. His figure was not very strong and burly, and he didn't seem to have the arrogant and fierce momentum of the war god at all. Whether seen from a distance or up close, he looked like a very elegant and gentle middle-aged man, calm and collected, but he gave everyone a feeling of unfathomable in a trance. He put down the fishing rod in his hand, took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a puff. The smoke drifted and fell into the lake casually. Gu Xingyun quietly observed the hidden dragon sea, which was full of spring, with a soft smile and a happy spirit. Who could have thought that at the meeting of the decision-making committee last night, the war god of Xianxia state was jointly attacked by the three groups and almost embarrassed? On another wooden boat beside Gu Xingyun, a ferocious-looking, even ugly, one-eyed man kept observing Gu Xingyun's reaction. Seeing the smile on this war god's face, he subconsciously reached out his hand, touched his extremely eye-catching bald head, and said helplessly, "Your Highness, are we just going to let them do whatever they want?" Gu Xingyun, who seemed to have been thinking alone, slightly raised his eyebrows. This elegant old man with a prominent identity and great power was not sharp at all. His casual movement of raising his eyebrows immediately made him look more mature and charming. He took a puff of the cigarette and said with a smile, "What's your opinion, Fenghua?" Gu Fenghua. He was one of the deputy governors of Kunlun City and also the most important right-hand man of Gu Xingyun in the Hidden Dragon Sea. He was ugly. After losing an eye in a fierce battle many years ago, he looked even more ferocious, making people want to stay away from him at first sight. It seemed that his character had changed because of his appearance. He behaved cruelly and was very fond of unconventional methods. Especially in recent years, as his strength surpassed the peak of the Thundershocking Realm and stayed between the fulfillment of the Thundershocking Realm and the half-step Invincible Realm, his style of doing things became more arrogant. He was notorious in the special warfare system. He was the most famous mad dog around Gu Xingyun, who would bite whoever he saw and would not let go until he was bitten to death. Since Gu Xingyun became the war god of Xianxia state, he had always been extremely steady. He cooperated with Gu Fenghua, who was surly and ruthless, and they had a tacit understanding. They could even be regarded as a golden partner. Years of friendship and tacit understanding made Gu Fenghua never treat Gu Xingyun as an outsider. He held the fishing rod in his hand and said coldly, "Who is Zhuang Huayang? He is an old man who dares to challenge your highness without weighing his own weight. Does he really think he is the same as he was 5 years ago? Your highness, I'm going to challenge Zhuang Huayang and find a chance to kill him. At worst, I'll disable him, which is also a lesson to others. If we don't take a stand this time, any Tom, Dick, or Harry will jump out and bother us. So we might as well take this opportunity to make an example of him." Gu Xingyun did not speak and seemed to be moved. He thought about it for 5 minutes, then shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "Headmaster Zhuang is not a chicken. 5 years ago, you were no match for him. 5 years ago, I just entered the peak of the Thundershocking Realm. Naturally, I was no match for him." Gu Fenghua looked dissatisfied and wanted to say more, but he was directly interrupted by Gu Xingyun. "Even now, you are no match for Headmaster Zhuang 5 years ago. Forget it. The old headmaster has been in the Sky Academy for many years and has students all over the world. He is a hero to Xianxia state and the special warfare system. This is his last stop. I very much hope that he can reach the finish line safely." Gu Xingyun paused, looked at Gu Fenghua, who was still unconvinced and looked uglier, and said calmly, "I'm serious." Gu Fenghua gritted his teeth and did not speak. Zhuang Huayang's state had declined severely in recent years, and he was even seriously inconsistent with the ranking of the top 10 contemporary experts in Xianxia state. This was a fact that everyone knew. 10 years ago was Zhuang Huayang's peak period. After Lu Tianqing's death, Zhuang Huayang ranked 4th among the top 10 contemporary experts in Xianxia state, second only to Wang Tianzong, Gu Xingyun, and Sidu Zhangyue. 5 years ago, the top 10 experts were ranked again. Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana Sword Master of Mount Shu, and Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Xianxia state, surpassed Zhuang Huayang one by one. The ranking at that time was still true. But for an old man in his 70s, the most unforgiving thing was time. Another 5 years were coming. Zhuang Huayong's strength declined more and more seriously. He was old and frail. If he ranked again this year, it would be extremely difficult for him to get on the list. Gu Fengbo was a popular candidate for the top 10 experts this time. He hoped to defeat Zhuang Huayong and solidify his title as one of the top 10 experts in advance. At that time, Gu Xingyun, Gu Qianchuan, and him would occupy 3 of the top 10 contemporary experts in Kunlun City. Who could compete with him? However, Gu Xingyun obviously did not want Zhuang Huayong to lose his integrity in his old age. During the 20 years in charge of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayong had sent away 6 generations of graduates. This was the real world with students. Gu Xingyun acted steadily. In the absence of benefits, he naturally did not want Gu Fengbo to attack Zhuang Huayong. Whether this matter succeeded or failed, it was likely to attract countless hostility, which was not what a wise man would do. So, let's just forget about it this time? Gu Fengbo took a deep breath, looked at Gu Xingyun, and waved his hand casually. A pack of cigarettes beside Gu Xingyun flew directly into his hand. He took one out and lit it silently. Forget it. Gu Xingyun nodded and said with a smile, "These years, the foundation of Kunlun City has become more and more stable, and there are more and more people against Kunlun City. What's the big deal about a few superficial reprimands? Bear it and be steady. There will always be a time to get back at them in the future." As for now, he narrowed his eyes slightly, and his eyes flickered, but they were still not the sharpness and decisiveness that belonged to the god of war. His eyes flickered with a kind of cunning and trickery that had experienced ups and downs. He took a drag on the cigarette and continued, "The urgent task now is to find out who killed Changjiang. I don't know why, when I think of this matter, I feel a little uneasy." Gu Fengbo said, "The task force has already gone to Huading." "Not enough." Gu Xingyun shook his head. "In a few days, I'm going to go to Huading in person. Within a month, this matter must come to light." Gu Fengbo took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Dongqing Wudi, Zhuang Huayong, and even Jiang Chenyan, they all have enough strength to kill Changjiang." In addition, there were 2 freshmen of the Sky Academy who appeared at the scene that day. "These people are all suspects." Gu Xingyun took over and said, "But they are not very suspicious. The 2 freshmen may ignore it, but how can they kill Changjiang? Do you think the unique skills of Kunlun City are the so-called secret books casually painted by charlatans? As for Dongqing Wudi and Zhuang Huai, I've talked to Zhong Yongming. They didn't have a direct conflict that day. Even if they are narrow-minded and want to kill, they won't do it so quickly. Those 2 old foxes won't be so imprudent. Samsara and Qin Weibai are the most likely. But even if they want to provoke, Qin Weibai won't directly choose Gu Changjiang as a breakthrough, and she went to the airport first. Gu Xingyun analyzed bit by bit, and finally there was only one name left. What about Jiang Chenyan? Gu Fengbo seemed to know what he was thinking and directly mentioned the name. He hesitated and continued, "A few days ago, First Elder seemed to be in Huading." Crack! The fishing rod in Gu Xingyun's hand was directly crushed, and the fishing rod sank into the lake. A fish that had just been hooked escaped and escaped. Gu Xingyun was expressionless. He whispered to himself, "First Elder." In recent years, the foundation of Kunlun City had gradually stabilized, and some internal contradictions had gradually surfaced. For the Gu family, Gu Qianchuan's bloodline was the real direct line, but now the power of Kunlun City was controlled by Gu Xingyun's bloodline. Gu Xingyun was unwilling to hand over power, and Gu Qianchuan was unwilling to give up his orthodox status. Such contradictions were almost irreconcilable. And with the passage of time, without external pressure, these contradictions had become more and more obvious in recent years. As a confidant of the bloodline of the city governor, Gu Changjiang had always been at odds with Gu Qianchuan. It was normal for him to want to kill Gu Changjiang. For many years, the Jiang family, a behemoth, had maintained a hazy connection with Kunlun City, both overtly and covertly. In fact, Gu Qianchuan seemed to have a closer connection with them. But could this slightly closer relationship let Jiang Chenyan and the Jiang family participate in the internal fight of Kunlun City? Could it even let Jiang Chenyan, an expert of the invincible realm, personally clear the obstacles for Gu Qianchuan to seize power? Gu Fengbo seriously pondered for a while, shook his head, and said hesitantly, "First Elder can't offer such a bargaining chip." "He can," Gu Xingyun said expressionlessly, "but does he really dare to offer such a bargaining chip?" A phone suddenly rang. Gu Xingyun took out his mobile phone and looked at the 3 words, Gu Yunxia, on the caller ID. He frowned slightly, picked it up, and chuckled. "Yunxia, what's the matter?" Gu Yunxia said something urgently on the other end of the phone. Gu Xingyun's smile suddenly disappeared. He silently put down the phone and narrowed his eyes. "Your Highness, what's the matter?" Gu Fengbo looked at him in confusion and asked. "Yun's sect is dead," Gu Xingyun said. Looking at Gu Fengbo's suddenly cold and ferocious face, he continued, "Meng Jiang mysteriously disappeared in Yunxia's office. There was no clue for a whole day." Gu Fengbo clenched his fists tightly, his face livid. What an eventful time. Gu Xingyun sighed softly. The air around him fluctuated slightly, and the ripples on the lake spread. The next second, his body had appeared by the lake. "Let's go to Huading right away. You come with me." Gu Fengbo stood up, jumped off the boat, and walked on the water. Monstrous waves shot around him with amazing momentum. At the same time, at the foot of Qingyun Peak of Kunlun Mountain, in the ice and snow thousands of meters above sea level, a figure wrapped in a black cloak appeared at the gate of Kunlun City. He carried a long sword and moved forward slowly. The city gate, which had been destroyed by Wang Tianzong's sword, had been urgently repaired in a few days. The black figure with a long sword looked at the busy figure at the city gate with mockery in his eyes. "Who are you?" The guards who repaired the city gate in front of the gate immediately found the black shadow in their sight and shouted loudly. The black shadow continued to move forward. The guards in front of the city gate suddenly became nervous. Dozens of people quickly gathered and said at the same time, "Stop." In their sight, the black shadow stopped as expected. However, before the guards could breathe a sigh of relief, the black shadow had already spoken directly. His voice shook the sky, and the wind and snow in the city flew wildly in the fierce sword intent. As his voice spread throughout the city, he said, "I'm Saint of Samsara, under the order of the Palace Master. I have a letter for His Highness, the God of War." He reached into his arms and took out an envelope. In the eyes of all the guards who suddenly became nervous, Saint stretched out his hand and waved it. The snow-white envelope instantly cut through the wind and snow. The wind howled, and the sword intent in the city rang. The envelope, like a white flowing light, shot straight to the city gate. There was a loud bang. In the wind and snow, the gate of Kunlun City, which had been urgently repaired, collapsed again. Gravel flew. Saint turned and left peacefully, not in a hurry. Several superiors of the thunder-shocking realm in Kunlun City appeared at the same time. They looked at the envelope on top of a pile of stones, and then at Saint's back, gloomy and silent. Who would want to provoke the first supermaster of Samsara if possible? Skeleton, the thunder-shocking realm expert who had appeared when Wang Tianzong was about to enter the city, hesitated for a moment, reached out to take the envelope and opened it. Only after a glance, his face changed dramatically. Gu Xingyun didn't go to Huading in person after all. Even Gu Fengbo didn't move. Because just when the two were about to leave, a message swept through every corner of the dark world at the speed of a hurricane. It was a letter from the master of Samsara Palace to the lord of Kunlun City. It was delivered by Saint. When the letter reached Gu Xingyun's ears, it also spread throughout the dark world. The whole dark world was instantly shocked, and the whole world was in an uproar. I heard that Kunlun City's martial arts is unparalleled in the world and is the pillar of martial arts in Zhongzhou State. I've admired it for a long time, so I came to ask for advice. Your Highness is the God of War of Zhongzhou State with unparalleled combat capability. You will not disappoint me, a woman. On June 15th at the Sky Academy, I will wait for your Highness's arrival. I would like to see your Highness's elegant demeanor. I hope your highness will not miss this opportunity. Swords and sabers have no eyes. I hope your highness can put aside the worries of life and death and recreate the glory of Kunlun City. Although I am a woman and child, I am willing to let go of everything and discuss the pinnacle of martial arts with your highness. I will not retreat until I die and will not rest until I die. If your highness is defeated, I hope that your highness will not be stingy with your head. It's fine if your highness avoids the battle. You can just refer to yourself as a rat from now on. In the future, when I return to the east, I will slaughter the rats and destroy your highness's rat nest. The glory of the Gu family for hundreds of years is tied to your highness. I hope your highness will consider it carefully. Signed by Samsara. They would not retreat until they were dead, and would not rest until they were dead. On June 15th, the Sky Academy. The entire Dark World thought that the master of Samsara Palace was crazy. The entire Dark World was also waiting for Gu Xingyun's reaction. On the same day that Gu Xingyun remained silent. In the northeast of Zhongzhou State. For the first time in many years, Sidutangyue, the hidden god of Zhongzhou State, walked out of Sai City, Mount Taibai. She challenged Gu Qianxuan, the first elder of Kunlun City. It was almost the same wording as the master of Samsara Palace. Chapter 117. As one of the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State, the Dongqing clan was extremely prosperous in Dongqing Wudi's generation. Dongqing Hongguang, the old master, also had 5 brothers, but 3 of them died on the battlefield. He and his younger brother, Dongqing Hanjian, had been supporting the huge Dongqing clan. At that time, the Dongqing clan was still a top wealthy and glorious family, but the pressure was not known to outsiders. In Dongqing Wudi's generation, the whole Dongqing clan really blossomed and bore fruit. Dongqing Wudi had 5 siblings: Wudi, Wushuang, Endless and Boundless, and Dongqing Wuqiu. Each of them was a real leader in their respective fields and could take charge of an area on their own. Even his wives and sons-in-law were all talents. Everyone in this generation of the Dongqing clan was not useless. Because of this, the Dongqing clan was now more prosperous than ever. The leader of the Dongqing clan today was Dongqing Wudi, a member of the decision-making committee known as the God of Massacre in Zhongzhou State. Although he was not a director giant, the only director giant in the giant group often followed Dongqing Wudi's opinion, which showed the status of the Dongqing clan in the giant group. If it weren't for the fact that Dongqing Wudi had no decent men in the next generation and only relied on the 2 sisters, Dongqing Qiuqi and Dongqing Rushi, the momentum of the Dongqing clan today would be even more amazing. That was really carrying on the past and opening up the future. It was drizzling in Luojing. Tiny raindrops fell on the sky above the ancient capital of the 13 dynasties, beautiful and tranquil. An Audi with a military license plate slowly drove out of the airport and went all the way along the airport expressway. After crossing most of the urban area of Luojing, it went straight to the suburbs at a steady pace. The mountain that symbolized supreme power in Luojing was getting closer and closer. The mountain rain was hazy. There was a vast silence between heaven and earth. On both sides of the mountain road, soldiers in raincoats with loaded guns stood motionless, silent, and piercingly cold. The mountain occupied by the Dongqing clan was said to be a military restricted zone. A regiment of troops was stationed here all year round. From the head of the regiment to each soldier, although the establishment number was under the name of the Zhongyuan military region, the Dongqing clan was responsible for all the living and wages of these veterans transferred from the border Praetorian Corps. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was the Dongqing clan's private army. The Audi with the military license plate passed by the sign engraved with the words, "Military Restricted Zone." The 2 rows of veterans guarding the intersection of the mountain road turned around at the same time and gestured for the Audi to stop. The Audi slowly came to a stop. The captain of the veteran squad quickly walked to the driver's seat, and before he could reach out to knock on the window had already rolled down. An extremely burly figure appeared in the captain's line of sight. This was a young man who looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in a military uniform and had a resolute expression on his face. His body was so huge that it was almost majestic. Even though he was sitting in the car, the captain could clearly sense the other party's surging and suffocating power. The captain glanced at the lieutenant colonel insignia and subconsciously wanted to salute. However, the majestic young man had already slowly said, "Make way. Mrs. Dongqing is in the car." Mrs. Dongqing? The captain was stunned subconsciously. He had been in the Dongqing clan for nearly 5 years and naturally knew the important figures of the Dongqing clan very well. Now several madams of Dongqing seemed to be on the mountain. How could another madam of Dongqing appear here? The captain was still in a daze. The rear window of the Audi had slowly rolled down, and a very soft and gentle voice sounded from the back. "Is it old Sue? When I went to the border camp, I saw you beside Woody. Woody said that you took a bullet for him on the battlefield? Why were you transferred here from the Border Control Corps?" Old Sue turned his head in disbelief. In the back of the car, through the rolled-down window, a woman who looked only about 30 years old was looking at him with a smile. This was a woman who could hardly be described as beautiful. If one had to add a word to her, it could only be beautiful. A woman who was so beautiful that people would feel awe. She was dressed in a decent lady's suit and had her hair tied up. Every move she made was indescribably graceful and luxurious. The peonies in Luojing were the best in the world, and she was like the most beautiful peonies in Luojing. She was dignified, elegant, gentle, and kind. Her beautiful face seemed a little haggard, but when her eyes moved, there was only a faint dignity that could make people feel pressure, in addition to amiability. Old Sue's whole body trembled with excitement. The rain beat on the raincoat, pitter-patter. Under the rain, Old Sue suddenly stood up straight, saluted, and said loudly, "Secretary Bai." The woman nodded gently, coughed, and said with a smile, "I've caught a bad cold recently, so I won't get out of the car. We're on the same side, so there's no need to be so polite, right? Yes. Secretary Bai's health is important. You must pay more attention." Old Sue nodded repeatedly and spoke almost incoherently. He suddenly turned around, waved his hand, and said, "Get out of the way, Secretary Bai is back." Several soldiers immediately got out of the way. The Audi slowly walked past Old Sue. When it brushed past the car, Old Sue narrowed his eyes. He could vaguely see a young woman who looked somewhat similar to Secretary Bai sitting next to her. She was casually playing with a dagger with a piercing cold glint in her eyes. Old Sue shook his head, pulled a soldier over, suppressed the ecstasy in his heart, and said, "Hurry up, call the regimental commander and tell him that Secretary Bai is back. Ask him to tell the old master quickly." In the entire Zhongzhou state, there was only one Mrs. Dongqing who could be called Secretary Bai. She was an extraordinary woman in the political arena of Zhongzhou state. She was Dongqing Wudi's wife, but she was not a vassal of Dongqing Wudi. Even when the two stood together, people could also see the sky that belonged to her when they admired the temperament of the god of massacre. Bai Qingqian, the former governor of Qinzhou province in Zhongzhou state and the current secretary of Guangdong province, used to be the first miss of the Bai family, and now Mrs. Dongqing. Old Sue took a deep breath. As a veteran transferred from the Border Control Corps, they had long given their faith and soul to the Dongqing clan. Anything worth being happy about in this top wealthy family was also worth celebrating for them. Bai Qingqian's arrival in the Dongqing clan was a happy event for the entire Dongqing clan. Old Sue chuckled foolishly and lit a cigarette. He took a puff happily and felt very comfortable. He had heard the old people here talk about the marriage of their marshal in private. It was said that at the beginning, the marshal and his wife were very loving. They had been attached to each other for several years after they met and got married. His wife was a high-ranking female official with a bright future outside, but at home, she was the most gentle and filial young mistress. She loved her husband, was filial to her parents-in-law, and never had any dissatisfaction. Now the relationship between the marshal and his wife was stable, but it was no longer the same as it was many years ago. According to some veterans who had stayed here for many years ago, for some unknown reason, his wife had a great conflict with Dongqing Hongguang, and even broke up completely. All of a sudden, they were almost incompatible like fire and water, and even his wife's attitude toward the marshal became cold. His wife also moved down the mountain from that time. A few years later, the marshal used some unknown means to ease the relationship with his wife. His wife also came back for a New Year's Eve dinner. Since then, no one had seen his wife come back. Over the years, even if the marshal and his wife met, they were mostly at their respective workplaces. If one counted carefully, this situation had lasted for almost 20 years. No one knew why his wife broke up with the old master, and no one dared to ask. Over time, everything about Bai Qingqian seemed to have disappeared from the mountain of the Dongqing clan. If Bai Qingqian hadn't met Old Su when she went to the Border Control Corps to visit Dongqing Wudi 5 years ago, Old Su wouldn't even have recognized Bai Qingqian. Old Su grinned. For the first time in more than a decade, his wife came home. In any case, this was a good sign. The Audi drove all the way through the lush path in the mountain. The mountains and rivers were hazy, and so was the misty rain. Bai Qingqian silently looked out of the window at the strange and familiar mountain scenery, and said nothing. A woman who seemed to be 25 or 26 years old sat lazily beside Bai Qingqian, casually trimming her nails with a dagger, and said with a smile, "Aunt, the Dongqing clan has changed a lot, hasn't it? I remember I came here once when I was a child, when I was only 11 or 12 years old. After that, you didn't come back here, and I didn't come back either. By the way, you seemed to come back once later. My father was so angry at that time that he almost came to kill you." The woman's appearance looked similar to Bai Qingqian's. Sitting together, they looked like a pair of charming sisters, but their temperaments were completely opposite. Bai Qingqian seemed to have a kind of graceful and noble atmosphere and gentleness at any time, while the woman sitting next to Bai Qingqian only gave people a clear feeling of coldness and danger. It was a kind of almost overwhelming momentum, which made it easy for people to ignore that she was actually very beautiful. Bai Yuming of the Bai family in Yuzhou, known as the Little God of Massacre, was the niece of Bai Qingqian, the top leader of Yuzhou City, the eldest daughter of Bai Zhanfeng, a member of the decision-making committee, and the first miss of the Bai family. This year, first Miss Bai, who was nearly 33 years old, was still alone. She did not attract countless young talents like her aunt did in the past. She even rarely appeared in public, but in the eyes of some real big shots, Bai Yuming was a very important figure. At the age of 33, she was an expert who was about to enter the peak of the thunder-shocking realm in the stabilization phase, and was as famous as Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai. Just this point alone was enough to prove that she was extremely talented. Bai Yuming was not called Bai Yuming before. Only a few people knew that the ghostly name Yuming came from the mouth of Great Master Wei, the most respected old monk in Zhongzhou State, and it was Great Master Wei who personally came to give her a name. This honor could not be refused by the Bai family at all. What's more, what Great Master Wei said when he gave her a name was somewhat shocking, so the Bai family had to accept this extremely strange name. This woman is extremely lucky, but when she reaches the peak, she will decline. She will die early, so she should be buffered by Yin Qi. The word Yuming is the most suitable. This was the original words of Great Master Wei. Since then, the name Bai Yuming had been fixed. Now Bai Yuming, who was 33 years old, had been very smooth since she was a child. Although she was not famous in Yuzhou, in the dark world, the title of Little God of Massacre was extremely resounding. Her progress in martial arts seemed to indicate that she was extremely lucky. "Aunt, do you remember you took me here to play when I was a child? There seems to be a water garden on the mountain, right? Let's go and have a look later." Bai Yuming looked at Bai Qingqian, who was silent, and continued to say with a smile. Bai Qingqian shook her head and said softly, "I have long forgotten where it is." They had not contacted each other for more than 10 years. Not to mention the water garden, she could hardly remember where the old man lived. Bai Yuming sighed softly and said no more. It had always been a mystery why her aunt broke up with the old master of the Dongqing clan over the years. Even when she returned to her parents' home, no matter how her father asked, her aunt refused to say a word. If it were not for her aunt's unchanged attitude in supporting the Dongqing clan, perhaps the Bai family and the Dongqing clan, the two pillar families of the giant group, would have publicly broken up. Chapter 118. There's one more chapter, 2 in a row. Don't miss it. In the wind and rain, the Audi sped up and went straight to the top of the mountain. In front of the villa on the top of the mountain, umbrellas were leaning against each other. Under the curtain of rain, led by Dongqing Hongguang, Dongqing Wudi, Thunder God, Uncle An, and the servants in the villa all came out to welcome Bai Qingqian, who had not been back for more than 10 years. Bai Qingqian looked at this scene quietly with calm eyes. "Aunt, you're so important that the old master came out to welcome you in person. Do you think he will hold the umbrella for you later?" The Audi slowly stopped in front of the villa. Bai Qingqian opened the door with indifferent eyes and said calmly, "Why do we need others to hold the umbrella? Don't we have our own umbrella?" The young man who was driving had already walked out of the driver's seat with an umbrella. Dongqing Hongguang, who had walked over with an umbrella, paused subconsciously, and the others also stopped. They were not afraid, but the impact of the young man who got out of the driver's seat was too strong. He was a strong man in the real sense. Nearly 2 meters tall, he was tall and straight. His body was almost beyond the range of fat and thin. His whole body was full of explosive muscles, indescribably strong and tough. He held the umbrella and opened the door. His expression was calm, but there was a force constantly emanating from him. This man had no momentum. The only thing people could think of when they saw him was his pure strength, which seemed to be able to tear tigers and leopards. This kind of strength ignored realms and had nothing to do with combat effectiveness. His burly and thick body casually stood there, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. "Su Chu." Dongqing Wudi, who followed Dongqing Hongguang, raised his eyebrows and looked surprised. "This is the first disciple of your jade pool?" Dongqing Hongguang looked at the young man in front of him, who could even make him feel a strong sense of oppression, with a face full of admiration. The first disciple of Jade Pool, Su Chu, codenamed Giant God, was born with thunder vein and had unparalleled courage. With the strength at the peak of the fire-flaming realm, he could fight against a thunder-shocking realm expert. He was worthy of being called a fierce general. Su Chu, who was 30 years old this year, had been staying in Jade Pool for many years. He had no official position and rarely went down the mountain. He was even a nobody in the outside world. Dongqing Hongguang had heard about this fierce talent from his son. Now feeling the surging power in his body, the old master suddenly felt that he deserved his reputation. But why was the eldest disciple of the Jade Pool by Qingqian's side? And even became his chauffeur? Little martial uncle. Uncle. Su Chu, who was holding an umbrella, glanced at Dongqing Wudi and said hello to Bai Yuming, who got off the car. "You?" Dongqing Wudi frowned. As soon as he opened his mouth, he saw Bai Qingqian in a black suit and trousers get out of the car and stand under the umbrella in Su Chu's hand. Graceful, luxurious, and colorful. In an instant, as she got out of the car, the gloomy sky seemed to brighten up. Dongqing Wudi immediately stopped talking. He looked at the old master beside him and whispered, "Dad." Every time after a meeting in Yuzhou, he would go home for a day and then go to the border camp. Today was a coincidence that Bai Qingqian came home. Dongqing Wudi was surprised and wanted to take this opportunity to ease the relationship between his wife and his father. Dongqing Hongguang's eyes had already moved away from Su Chu and fell on Bai Qingqian. He held the umbrella tightly in his hand and took a step forward. The old man, who had been fearless all his life, suddenly felt a little timid and nervous at this moment. His eyes gradually became complicated. He was no longer calm, but a little guilty and helpless. Bai Qingqian stood quietly and looked at Dongqing Hongguang, expressionless and silent. "You're back." Dongqing Hongguang pretended to be natural and greeted her. Bai Qingqian nodded and said directly, "I have a favor to ask." Dongqing Hongguang nodded with a smile and didn't ask what it was. He said kindly, "Let's go in first. It's still a little cold outside." "No need." Bai Qingqian said indifferently, "Just a few words. I'll leave after that." Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi's faces changed at the same time. She went up the mountain but didn't enter the door and didn't give any explanation. This was enough to show that even if Bai Qingqian took the initiative to go up the mountain this time, It was not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She hadn't come back for more than 10 years. Now even if she came back, she was unwilling to enter the door. This was no longer a problem that could be explained by the knot in her heart. This was resentment, the most naked, resolute, and helpless resentment. A strong look of pain flashed in Dongqing Hongguang's eyes. He opened his mouth and murmured to himself, "Let's go in first. It's cold outside." At this moment, the old master was no longer the once all-powerful director of the decision-making committee, nor was he the old patriarch of the Dongqing clan. He was the most ordinary old man, guilty, helpless, and painful, but he didn't know how to be forgiven. Perhaps he couldn't forgive her. "I could have gone in." Bai Qingqian gently raised the corner of her mouth. She was still so noble and graceful, but her smile was full of a kind of chilling coldness. A week ago, Dongqing Hongguang's mouth twitched, and he stood where he was in a daze. Even his hand holding the umbrella was slightly trembling. A week ago. That was the time when Li Tianlan came here. Did anyone inform me when you picked him up from Huading? Where were you when he was seriously injured in Huading? Where were you when he was targeted in the Sky Academy? Yes, you were all on the mountain, standing so high. The scenery is very good, isn't it? Every word was heart-wrenching. Bai Qingqian's expression grew colder, with a kind of deep-rooted hatred. "Qingqian." Dongqing Wudi opened his mouth with a bitter smile. As soon as he called out her name, Bai Qingqian had directly interrupted him. "Shut up." She looked coldly at Dongqing Wudi and then at Dongqing Hongguang, saying with a disdainful face, "The god of massacre family? Military giant? Are you men?" Ahem. In the wind and rain, her body trembled slightly, and she violently coughed. "Let's talk inside." Dongqing Hongguang continued to speak, and his tone was weak, almost pleading. Bai Qingqian smiled coldly. She took a deep breath and said calmly, "When I came out of here more than 10 years ago, I told myself that I was still the daughter-in-law of the Dongqing clan. I would fulfill the responsibilities and obligations of this identity, and my ashes could also be buried with Wudi. But as long as I am alive, I will never step into this door. If I break this oath, I am willing to be struck by lightning and die." Resolute, mournful, and without the slightest leeway. As soon as she said this, everyone's expression changed dramatically. Bai Yuming looked at her aunt in disbelief. It was not until this moment that she realized that the secret that her aunt and the Dongqing clan had hidden for many years seemed to be more serious than she had imagined. If she took one step into the door, she would be willing to be struck by lightning and die. How desperate must a woman be to make such a vicious oath? Thunder rolled across the sky. Bai Qingqian took a step forward and walked directly out of the umbrella in Su Chu's hand. The cold rain fell on her, wetting her body and pale cheeks. She looked up at the gloomy sky. Thunder rumbled across the sky. Bai Qingqian suddenly smiled, desolate and brilliant. She looked at Dongqing Hongguang in front of her and said word by word, "It's thunder. Are you so eager for me to die?" Dongqing Hongguang staggered back a step, his face pale, and said painfully, "I'm sorry, the Dongqing clan is sorry to you." Bai Qingqian smiled tremblingly and suddenly said calmly, "The Dongqing clan has owed me for many years." "Old master, don't you think so?" Dongqing Hongguang nodded, his face pale. "Okay." Bai Qingqian said, "You owe me for so many years. Today you pay it back." Su Chu is going to enter the Sky Academy as a student. Isn't there one less instructor for the actual combat lesson in the Sky Academy? I think Yu Ming is very suitable. Dongqing Wudi, who was as bitter as his father, frowned and said subconsciously, "Qingqian, do you want to?" "I don't want to." Bai Qingqian glanced at him and said coldly, "I'm doing it. I have to do it. I know you care about Tianlan. He's my son-in-law. I know what to do. Now he's your son-in-law. He's only your son-in-law, not mine." Bai Qingqian's cold eyes fell directly on Dongqing Wudi. Dongqing Wudi's heart suddenly sank. The last time he saw his wife's eyes like this, she hadn't said a word to him for several years. This time, "I'll do my best," Dongqing Hongguang finally said in a hoarse voice. Bai Qingqian nodded and turned to get into the Audi. Bai Yuming and Su Chu got in the car at the same time. When the car turned around and left, the only female provincial leader in Zhongzhou state rolled down the window again and said calmly, "When Tianlan married my daughter, I came back to attend the wedding. This mountain is too much of an eyesore. I don't like it." The Audi went down the mountain in the wind and rain and went away. Dongqing Hongguang stood there with an umbrella and didn't move for a long time. "Dad?" Dongqing Wudi cried. The marshal of Zhongzhou state was ruthless when facing the enemy, but he was a complete mess when dealing with his own family affairs. He didn't have the demeanor of a god of slaughter at all. "Say no more." Dongqing Hongguang took a deep breath and said calmly, "Do as Qingqian said. Su Chu's matter is easy. You have to fight for the position of the leader of the actual combat course for the girl of the Bai family." Dongqing Wudi nodded, then shook his head with a wry smile. This was the most difficult thing to do. Zhuanghuayang state was declining. Kunlun City was ambitious in the composition of this year's Sky Academy. Lu Xiuwei and Yang Mengjiang were both forcibly inserted by Kunlun City in order to take the leadership of the Sky Academy after Zhuanghuayang retired. But now Lu Xiuwei was dead and Yang Mengjiang disappeared mysteriously. Kunlun City's influence in the Sky Academy had suffered heavy losses. In the next period of time, the personnel changes in the Sky Academy were bound to be the focus of the special warfare system. Tribulation had not adapted to Lu Xiuwei's position, and now it was very likely that he would be further in charge of the political department. The Wang family of Beihai would definitely get the position of deputy director of teaching left by Tribulation. This was part of the deal. As for Yang Mingjiang's position, if Kunlun City let go again, Gu Yunxia's strength would be greatly damaged, and her voice in the Sky Academy would be even weaker. How could it be easy to take Yang Mingjiang's position from Kunlun City? A phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Wudi picked up the phone and listened for a while. Then his eyes narrowed. He thought for a while and said softly, "Dad, it's little Five." The master of Samsara Palace suddenly issued a letter of challenge to Kunlun City. On June 15th, she will fight with Gu Xingyun in the Sky Academy to the death. Sai City also took action. Situ Zhangyue has made an appointment to fight with Gu Qianchuan. The place has not been decided yet, but it will also be a fight to the death. Little Five was Dongqing Wuchou, who ranked 5th in Dongqing Wudi's generation. Now he was the minister of the 2nd Department of the General Staff Headquarters of Zhongzhou State, which was the legendary military intelligence department. Naturally, the news he got was the most accurate and fast. Dongqing Hongguang, who was a little lost, froze for a moment, and then instinctively narrowed his eyes. The thing about Bai Yuming, this is an opportunity. He was silent for a while before he slowly opened his mouth. Dongqing Wudi was stunned. He understood what Dongqing Hongguang meant, but he couldn't believe it. "Dad, as the god of war of Zhongzhou State, Gu Xingyun doesn't even have the courage to fight with the master of Samsara Palace?" Of course he has the courage to fight. But does he dare to fight to the death? Does Zhongzhou State dare? Chapter 119. There was an autumn pond on Mount Dibbing. It was called a pond, but in fact, it was a river winding down from the mountainside, with a length of 6 or 7 kilometers. The autumn pond was located in a low terrain with a radius of 100 meters in the middle of the river. The water was clear, just like a treasure pond. The autumn pond was not big, but it had its own scenery in 4 seasons. It was gentle and beautiful. When everything was revived, the clear water flowed, and the ripples in the pond were turbulent. The green mountains, white clouds, and green trees were clearly reflected in the water. The gentle wind blew with sweet moisture. It was picturesque and beautiful. It could make immortals forget their worries and teach mortals to forget their customs. Summer river and autumn pond. This was a private scenery that belonged only to Mount Dibbing and the Wang family of Beihai. At first glance, it might not be amazing, but when looking back, people were already immersed in it. Lin Fengting liked this kind of scenery very much. He was about to reach the age of knowing his destiny, and he had been traveling all his life, either by himself or with his wife and children. When a person had peerless martial arts but no ambition, he just wanted to live an incognito life and had endless money to spend. He could really live a comfortable life however he wanted. In the past few decades, Lin Fengting had traveled around the world. He had seen too many enchanting sceneries of verdant hills and limpid waters. He had seen too many magnificent spectacles of blooming flowers. He had seen too many magnificent scenes. To enter the fire-flaming realm, he went straight to the polar region. To enter the invincible realm, he climbed Mount Everest alone. His life was really too full and rich, leisurely and wonderful. But no matter how many places he had been to, in his heart, in front of him, Mount Dibing, was the most worry-free and worry-free pool. The lake and the mountain were beautiful, and the water was hazy. This situation and this scenery were the most unique and natural. I really don't want to leave. I've been sitting here for a day, and I even forgot the way home. Lin Fengting sat quietly on the green and soft grass and sighed softly. His tone was soft, with a trace of imperceptible sadness. Then stay here. Wang Tianzong sat beside Lin Fengting and said with a chuckle, "You can choose any palace on Mount Dibing, even if you want the Sword Emperor Palace where I live. But you have to wait for them to repair it." Lin Fengting turned his head and glanced at him. He put aside the fishing rod in his hand and let the fish that had bitten the hook struggle to escape under the water. He took out a cigarette and handed it to Wang Tianzong. He shook his head and said, "If I really live in Mount Dibing, I'm afraid I can't see any scenery. There's always time." Wang Tianzong said seriously, "It's not a big deal, and you don't need to do anything about it. You can live a stable life now. If you want, how about hanging the title of Lord Equal in the Wang family of Beihai? Your order is my order for everything in the Wang family of Beihai." He stood side by side with Sword Emperor in the Wang family of Beihai. Such an honor was simply supreme. Not to mention others, even among all the invincible realm experts in the Dark World, there were few who could refuse this condition. Lin Fengting shook his head and said calmly, "Forget it. I'm not the kind of person who can sit still. I don't want to participate in your affairs. It's exhausting. How can it be as refreshing as me to do whatever I want?" Wang Tianzong sighed softly and didn't say much. When the Li family was destroyed, Lin Fengting, who was of the same origin as the Li family, didn't stand up. Instead, he let the martial arts force founded by the ancestors of the Lin family disappear bit by bit. With such a mentality, the other party obviously made up his mind not to participate in the game of the Dark World. If he insisted too much, what good would it do? Wang Tianzong was a little lost in thought. Over the past 500 years, the Wang family of Beihai and Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun had produced 9 successive generations of invincible realm experts. But no one knew that the Lin family where Lin Fengting was also produced 9 successive generations of invincible realm experts. In the shining years of glory and honor, the Wang family of Beihai. In Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, every invincible realm expert was famous in the world. But what about the invincible realm experts of the Lin family? They traveled all day long and lived in seclusion. No matter how the outside world changed, they remained motionless. 9-generation invincible realm experts. Except for their ancestors, no one else entered the human world. They came and went quietly. No matter how time went by, no matter how the wind and clouds surged. What kind of transcendent elegance was this? Wang Tianzong lit a cigarette, shook his head and said, "Where are you going next?" "Go back to Europe and wander around. Chu Xue wants to go to the Vatican. She said she wanted to see the headquarters of the Vatican. I may take her there." Lin Fengting said casually with the cigarette but in his mouth. "To the Vatican?" Wang Tianzong said with a playful smile, "You caused a lot of trouble there in the past few years, didn't you? I heard that their Pope has issued an arrest warrant. Our sis has been chasing you for several days, but you still managed to escape. The news from Italy is vague, but I guess it's you." "How do you know?" Lin Fengting looked embarrassed. There was really nothing glorious about it. Besides, it had been 5 or 6 years, and he almost forgot it. "You sold the Tao Te Ching in front of the Apostolic Palace. And you set up a stall to tell people's fortunes. Who else could it be except you?" No wonder the Pope denounced you as a heretic. And how many heretics in the world can Arcis not catch up with? Saint Arcis, Saint War Angel of the Vatican, ranked second on the world divine list, second only to the Sword Emperor Wang Tianzong. The representative of the Vatican's force chased him for several days and finally failed to catch up with him. Wang Tianzong casually thought about it and knew it was Lin Fengting by elimination. Ahem. Lin Fengting coughed and suddenly looked around. This handsome middle-aged man suddenly had a trace of wretchedness. He said with a sneaky smile, "I tell you, don't sell me out. That bastard chased me for 3 days and almost chased me out of the border of Italy. Later, I went to the Vatican again and beat him up when he was not paying attention." Wang Tianzong's mouth twitched. He didn't know this news. Not to mention the strength of Lin Fengting and Arcis. Lin Fengting dared to go deep into the Vatican to beat Arcis, which showed that Lin Fengting was lawless and did whatever he wanted. And the Vatican naturally wouldn't publicize this matter. It was not a good thing for their Saint War Angel to be beaten up. "Prepare a plane ticket for me. I'll leave tonight. I'll go to Yuzhou first, then the border, and then back," Lin Fengting said lazily, playing with the fishing rod in his hand. "I thought you would go to Huading." Wang Tianzong turned his head and took a deep look at Lin Fengting, chuckling. Lin Fengting was silent for a while and then shook his head. "I wanted to see the descendant of the Li family of this generation, but I gave up after thinking about it. I didn't want to enter the secular world. What's the use of going there? I don't want to, so I won't give him any hope." Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said, "The sword you owe the Li family, I'll pay it back when the time is right." Lin Fengting shook his head and repeated Li Tianlan's name twice. Suddenly, he said, "How are you going to deal with Li Tianlan?" "I gave him a set of immortality." Wang Tianzong said expressionlessly, "Even if the Wang family owes the Li family too much, the immortality has been paid off. From now on, we don't owe each other anything. If we become enemies in the future, we'll kill him." Lin Fengting moved the corner of his mouth and tentatively said, "With Yuatong by his side in the future?" Wang Tianzong's expression didn't change. He just quietly looked at the water of the where-forgotten pool in front of him. At this moment, he seemed to be far away from Lin Fengting. He was no longer Lin Fengting's childhood friend, but the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, who ranked on the divine list. Ambitious. A word suddenly appeared in Lin Fengting's mind, and his eyes became a little dispirited. He stretched out his hand and pointed downstream, whispering, "The hot spring at the foot of the mountain is still there, right?" The Xia River of Mount Dibing flowed around the mountain. The autumn pond in front of them made people forget their worries. The area at the end of the downstream was natural geothermal. The Wang family changed a medium-sized hot spring there, which was not open to the public. It was only used occasionally during private leisure time. "It's still there." Wang Tianzong's expression softened a little and he whispered, "In fact, standing here, the most impressive thing for me is when I was a child." Lin Fengting said softly, looking absent-minded and soft, "I was 9 years old that year? Second brother was 11, and you were 12, right? When my father took me to Mount Dibing for the first time, he said that he would introduce 2 good brothers to me. Uncle Wang took you to pick us up, and then we picked up Uncle Li together. At that time, the 3 brothers were soaking in the hot spring below, and we peed in the water above. Oh, that should be the last time the 3 of them and the 3 of us got together, right? Later, I saw second brother alone, and I also saw you alone, but we didn't get together. Later, second brother committed treason and died at the border, until now." His voice lowered and finally became silent. "How many years has it been?" Wang Tianzong tightly pursed his lips and said nothing. "I always remember the 3 words good brother." Lin Fengting paused and finally said, "Big brother." When Wang Tianzong was about to speak, the phone suddenly rang. He answered the phone and said indifferently, "Hello." Lin Fengting looked at him quietly. Until he hung up the phone and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, he said calmly, "What's the matter?" "There's a very interesting thing." Wang Tianzong said softly, "On June 15th, the master of Samsara Palace challenged Gu Xingyun in the Sky Academy to a life-and-death battle. Sidu Cangyue also joined in the fun and challenged Gu Qianchuan. Interesting. This year's special warfare system and the dark world are getting more and more interesting. Lin Fengting's eyes lit up slightly, and then he frowned and said, "Has the master of Samsara Palace recovered from her injury? June 15th? It's estimated that it's difficult for her to fully recover in more than a month." Wang Tianzong was silent and did not speak. His eyes kept flickering and he looked thoughtful. "What do you think?" Lin Fengting waited for a while and continued to ask. He lived in seclusion and knew far less about the general trend of Zhongzhou State and the dark world than Wang Tianzong, who was involved in the game. But he had to pay special attention to the master of Samsara Palace. The master of Samsara Palace could pour out the 24 moves of sword, the core unique skill of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. What was the relationship between her and the Li family? I don't know. Huading has been a little busy recently. Maybe she wanted to stand up for Li Tianlan, but not entirely. The divine list would be re-ranked next year. She challenged Gu Xingyun to increase her ranking. The higher her ranking was, the more samsara would gain after destroying Night Spirit. Otherwise, who would be willing to destroy Night Spirit only to benefit others in the end after all the hard work? From the perspective of Zhongzhou State, the academics may secretly instigate the decisive battle between Samsara and Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun dares to fight, but he will not easily fight to the death. The inside story behind the upcoming battle is complicated. Wang Tianzong sighed softly. Even though he was the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, it was difficult for him to grasp the specific trend of the general trend until the truth came to light. The academics secretly instigated? The master of Samsara Palace is not stupid. She is seriously injured. Does she really think that Gu Xingyun, the fourth on the divine list, is just a decoration? Lin Fengting frowned subconsciously. Wang Tianzong glanced at him and chuckled. Don't forget that her surname used to be Gu. Her surname used to be Gu, but she mastered the unique skill of the Li family. Lin Fengting's eyes lit up. I'm going to Huading to watch the fun. I don't know how many overseas Invincible Realm experts want to watch the battle. Do you want to go and have a look? It's okay to stay for one more month, right? Wang Tianzong looked at Lin Fengting and said with a smile. Lin Fengting hesitated for a while and finally said excitedly, "You go and arrange it first. I'll wait for you at the foot of the mountain." Wang Tianzong nodded and took a step forward. Then he disappeared instantly. Lin Fengting sat there and smoked a cigarette quietly. When it was almost time, he picked up the fishing rod and shook it casually. There was no fish on the hook. But the water of the entire carefree pool rose with the movement of his hand. A large amount of water rushed to the sky dozens of meters high in the twinkling of an eye, like a water curtain. The water curtain was clear and sparkling in the sunlight. Lin Fengting's figure stayed in the water curtain for a while and then disappeared in an instant. The water in the pool suddenly fell, splashing, and the rumbling sound echoed in the mountains. A sigh floated in the deafening sound of the water, vague and clear. Chapter 120. Once the course of the Sky Academy began, it would not be stopped because of other things. There were 13 courses, 1 class a day, and 2 classes a month without interruption. At the end of the month, the Academy would draw up the curriculum for the next month and send it to every student on the first day of the month. Because of the different classes, the order of the curriculum was not exactly the same. In a month, after 2 rounds of lessons, it was time for the drill. The maneuver would last 2 days during the first month, and the maneuver would last 3 days during the first month. The content of the maneuver was also varied. It could be an internal confrontation, a timed competition, or a confrontation with other Secret Service agencies outside the Academy, or the elites of various theaters of operations. It was tense, intense, compact, and intense. Every student's fate could be changed after a maneuver. In the past decades of the Sky Academy, because of a seemingly ordinary maneuver, some people amazed the world with a single brilliant feat, while others failed to recover. Such examples could be found everywhere. In the Dark World and the Special Warfare System, which were outside the law and morality, there were ups and downs. Behind the winner was not only honor and disgrace, but also endless blood and despair. This was the case for the regular drill once a month, and even more so for the major drill once every 3 months. The major maneuver was different from ordinary competitions. The ranking of each maneuver would be recorded in the students' files. The scale of this maneuver did not have to be large. The reason why it was called a major maneuver was that it involved the most important turning point for many students in the next 3 years, class assignment. In the big maneuver held once every 3 months, the top 50 students in the whole school would enter the top class led by Zhuang Huayang himself. Not to mention the principal's personal attention and occasional teaching, the 13 tutors of this class were the leaders of each subject group, which was the most valuable part of this class. In all the past major maneuvers, some people advanced and some people retreated. The winner did not dare to slack off and strived for the top, while the loser did not dare to give up and gritted his teeth to catch up. Competition. This was the core word of the Sky Academy and the everlasting atmosphere. After the actual combat class, Zhuang Huayang personally sent Li Tianlan back to the dormitory. He once said that in the Sky Academy, every injury could lead to the death of a genius or the disappearance of a genius. In such a high-intensity competitive atmosphere, talent and background were all fake. Only desperate efforts were real. After entering the Sky Academy, it might not end well if one worked hard, but if one didn't work hard, he would definitely not end well. Li Tianlan had wind and thunder veins. He had the exquisite bone. He had the heart of a heavenly king. There was a supreme inheritance. But none of that mattered here. Risking his life was the most important thing. After the ups and downs, he returned to the Sky Academy. With the end of the actual combat lesson, his mind seemed to be completely immersed in the Sky Academy. For 3 consecutive days. Interrogation meditation course. Li Tianlan got the first place and was rewarded with 10 credits. Information collection and analysis. Li Tianlan successfully passed the passing line and was rewarded with 1 credit. Firearms control course. Li Tianlan failed, so 2 credits were deducted. The news of Yang Mingjiang's mysterious disappearance in Gu Yunxia's office spread throughout the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan didn't think much about it and just immersed himself in his own world. The battle between the master of Samsara Palace and Gu Xingyun shook the whole dark world. Li Tianlan contacted Qin Weibai immediately. Qin Weibai, who looked much better, told Li Tianlan confidently that even if the master of Samsara Palace could not defeat Gu Xingyun, at least she would not lose. As for Sidu Zhongyue's challenge to Gu Qianchuan, Li Tianlan didn't ask at all. An expert on the divine list, even the last one on the divine list, had nothing to worry about when dealing with Gu Qianchuan, an invincible realm expert who could not even get on the holy list. He didn't want to. Li Tianlan didn't want to think about anything. After the actual combat course, Yang Mingjiang's condescending kick, Gu Yunxia's gloomy and resentful eyes, Wang Yuedong's pale and haggard face, Ning Qianqing, Li Beiyan, Yu Qinyan, and others who risked their lives. All these made him completely immersed in the Sky Academy. Samsara, Sai City, Kunlun City, the Wang family of Beihai, the general trend of Zhongzhou State, everything seemed to be leaving him. He didn't want to do anything anymore. With his strength, he couldn't do anything. From the border to Huding, facing the first contact with the prosperous Zhongzhou State, Li Tianlan's heart was complicated like a spider web. He wanted to grasp the root of the problem at once, but all kinds of obstacles entangled him, making it difficult for him to move. Until now, everything in his heart had completely calmed down. It seemed that everyone was right. Now, what he needed most was to grow. He could only grow. The first sentence of the invincible manual of the map of God of War was full of a kind of arrogance and arrogance. Only look at yourself, not the world. In the prosperous times, recalling this sentence again, Li Tianlan's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and his feelings became deeper. He began to make his own plan to plan the future of the East Emperor Palace. Samsara, Sai City, Dongqing clan, and the academics might give him some help in the future, but only the East Emperor Palace was his real and complete foundation. Although this foundation was shallow, it was the most suitable for him now. Among the 13 courses in the Sky Academy, except for the actual combat course, the other courses were 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. The time after class was completely free. Li Tianlan's schedule according to this period could be said to be the limit. He got up at 3 in the morning and practiced the Buddhist incantation of 9 words of tribulation at 5:30. He practiced the 24 moves of sword from 5:30 to 7. He had breakfast. He had classes. He had lunch for half an hour. He meditated from 12 to 2 at noon. He had classes in the afternoon. He had dinner at 6:30 and went to the training ground. He spent an hour learning to shoot and another hour learning to drive. He had a break from 8:30 to 9:30. He accompanied Wang Yuetong, chatted with Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing, and talked about their future development of the East Emperor Palace. He meditated from 10 to 1 o'clock. Then he rested for 2 hours. He got up and practiced the shadow formula. Over and over again. This was most of his life for the next 3 years. Of course, he did not go out to perform tasks, exercises, and holidays. Li Tianlan would not deliberately pursue perfection. He allowed his plan to deviate, but he also had a bottom line in his heart, that was, the deviation could not exceed half an hour. So after the actual combat course, Li Tianlan suddenly became extremely busy. After Wang Yuetong slept for a whole day, she got up and took the potion given to her by the enchantress. Basically, she was fine. She was just overexhausted, and her injury was not serious. Li Tianlan was seriously injured, but under the stimulation of a whole set of immortality potions, his so-called serious injury was almost recovering every minute and second. This made him look a little pale, but he was always energetic. He had a plan and a goal. Personally, his goal was to reach the pseudo-invincible realm of the chi-controlling realm by the end of this year after thoroughly understanding the Buddhist incantation of 9 words, and then enter the ice-condensing realm. Within 3 years, he would reach the pseudo-invincible realm of the fire-flaming realm and be ready to break through to the thunder-shocking realm at any time. The academic's 10-year plan also needed his speed. In 10 years, it would take 7 years for him to enter the invincible realm from the thunder-shocking realm. He had talent and inheritance, so this time should not be too tight. As for the East Emperor Palace, in 3 years, he also wanted to upgrade the East Emperor Palace, which was already a department-level institution, to an institution not inferior to the Thunder they joined now. This required massive military merits and connections, which were destined to be obtained in countless foreign missions. So, while he was improving his combat capability, he also made requests to Li Beidian, Ning Qianqing, and the others. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing were now in the fire-flaming realm, so he hoped that they could advance 1 level a year. 3 years later, they would surpass the peak of the fire-flaming realm and reach the fulfillment realm. It would be best if they could enter the thunder-shocking realm. As for Wang Yuetong, Li Tianlan's requirements for her were similar to Li Beidian's. Although he did not know how long the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai could stay in the East Emperor Palace, she was his woman. It was always good to improve her strength. Yu Qingyan's martial arts was a standard heterodox method. It was powerful but not orthodox. Li Tianlan was going to consult Yu Donglai in person about her path. The plaque of the dormitory had been sent out of the Sky Academy. Yu Donglai, who had closed Yu's private home cuisine, was personally in charge of his new institution. Li Tianlan asked curiously. It was said that the address Qin Weibai chose for him was in the suburbs. It was a pity that he could not go out for the time being and could not have a look in person. Yi Huayu was Li Beidian's martial niece. This beautiful girl was the kind that made people feel comfortable when they saw her. However, her relationship with Li Beidian was obviously a little complicated. Her growth was all in Li Beidian's hands. Within 3 years, it would not be a problem for Yi Huayu to at least approach the peak of the fire-flaming realm. At the thought of this, Li Tianlan was full of pride and expectation. Although the number of people in the East Emperor Palace was small, none of them were useless. They were all elite soldiers. 3 years later, if they could really improve their strength according to the plan, as long as they had enough military merits, they would basically not encounter too much resistance to upgrade to the deputy governor level. A bright future was expected, which also made Li Tianlan more motivated. In the dead of night, in the woods not far from the dormitory area, the wind was whistling. With Li Tianlan as the center, a large amount of air around him was vibrating at a slow and constant speed. On the trees around him, the emerald green leaves were detached from the branches and leaves in the slightly twisted air and flew aimlessly. Li Tianlan stood where he was, motionless. 10 meters away, a shadow identical to Li Tianlan stood opposite him, also motionless. He held the information of the Buddhist incantation of 9 words that tribulation gave him and frowned slightly. The shadow also frowned. It was extremely lifelike. But this was the limit of what Li Tianlan could do now. In a few days, Li Tianlan had reached the basic level of the shadow formula. He could directly release a shadow and exchange positions with the shadow. This benefited from a lot of inspiration and understanding when he sorted out the half of the shadow formula for Wang Xiaoyao. Now his shadow could imitate some of his subtle movements, but that was all. Except that he could switch places with his shadow without anyone noticing, his shadow had no attack power at all. Naturally, it did not have the super explosive power of tribulation. What on earth went wrong? Li Tianlan frowned and thought hard. He tried again and again, and the vibration in the air gradually became faster. But in this way, not only did it not work. Instead, the shadow 10 meters in front of him became fluctuating, as if it was going to disappear. Why do you have to be centered on yourself? Is this the invincible manual's eye, the unique and supreme? A voice suddenly sounded above Li Tianlan. Tribulation appeared silently and slowly floated down in front of Li Tianlan. His whole body almost merged with the surrounding night in an instant. Li Tianlan was not surprised. When he came to the woods for the first time in the middle of the night, tribulation followed him. But these 2 days, seeing his efforts, tribulation had not spoken. Is it wrong? Li Tianlan looked at tribulation and asked seriously. I can't say it's wrong. Tribulation shook his head and said, it's just that the method is wrong. Without waiting for Li Tianlan to understand, he took another step forward. A shadow that was half transparent and only had arms filled with black gas appeared in front of Li Tianlan. Tribulation's body was still standing in front of Li Tianlan, side by side with the shadow. But in Li Tianlan's perception, tribulation had completely disappeared. In front of him, there was only the shadow. Chapter 121. There is another chapter ahead. It was posted a minute ago. Don't miss it. In the chi-controlling realm, the air around you is not your vassal, but a part of your body. In other words, your body is a part of the air. When a sufficiently strong shadow appears, you actually don't exist before you switch positions. Whether it's in the eyes of your enemies or in your own heart, you don't exist. You're just air. Tribulation stood in front of Li Tianlan, but his voice drifted in the sky. To be more precise, when the shadow comes out, you become a domain. When the shadow comes out, you become a domain. The shadow is no longer a part of you, but you become a part of the shadow. You are not the one driving it, but it is the other way around. Tribulation's body seemed to have completely disappeared from Li Tianlan's perception. But in front of Li Tianlan, he and the shadow beside him raised their hands at the same time. A jet-black arm knife stretched out from his cuff. There was also a vague and sharp color on his shadow hand. Li Tianlan's scalp went numb. From the perspective of orthodox martial arts, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words could definitely be regarded as an unorthodox way, or even a crooked way. But the sharpness and treachery in it made everyone's scalp numb. Forbid, Tribulation said softly. In an instant, the air and leaves around Li Tianlan twisted suddenly stopped in midair. As soon as this pseudo-invincible realm was formed, a not dazzling but extremely condensed killing intent rose up and instantly smashed Tribulation's domain. Do you understand? Tribulation asked. If you want to imitate your movements with the shadow formula, you must understand this move of mine well. You should form a domain with your own body, break the domain with killing intent, and reach the peak. Only in this way can you have the strongest shadow and the strongest outbreak. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, "After listening to Martial Uncle's words, I have some ideas, but I get nothing. It seems that I understand, but it seems that I don't." Take your time. Tribulation seemed to give a rare smile. "Your current progress is very good. We still have time, don't worry." Li Tianlan nodded in silence and did not speak. The deep night spread high in the sky. The night filled the woods, the academy, the magnificent Yangtze River and the sea, as far as the eye could see. 50 meters away, Lin Fengting stood silently on the canopy, drifting with the night wind. He looked more and more elegant and indifferent. Listening to the conversation between Tribulation and Li Tianlan, he chuckled and said, "This shadow is interesting. I don't understand his principle either. Tianzong, he said that his unique skill is the strongest outbreak. What do you think?" The martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai were also famous for their explosive force. Lin Fengting really wanted to see what Wang Tianzong's expression would be when he heard that his unique skill was the strongest explosive force. Wang Tianzong stood beside Lin Fengting and said calmly, "In terms of the instantaneous outbreak, among those in the same realm, his Buddhist incantation of 9 words is indeed the strongest. It's not much worse than the sword of 6 paths of the Wang family of Beihai. He's far from it." It exploded in an instant. For a short period of time. The meaning seemed similar, but it was completely different. "I know what you mean." Lin Fengting smiled and nodded. "But what are the 9 secret words? The Buddhist incantation of 9 words of the Great Soaring Temple?" After 2 days in Huading, he still couldn't resist the temptation of seeing the current successor of the Li family, so he took Wang Tianzong to the Sky Academy. One of them ranked first on the divine list, and the other was an invincible realm expert who could beat up the second on the divine list. Sneaking into the Sky Academy was as easy as walking on flat ground, but it was unlikely that they would be discovered. The two originally wanted to find Li Tianlan directly according to the address they got from the enchantress. But as soon as they approached the residential area, Lin Fengting saw the target. In terms of appearance and figure, Li Tianlan was not very similar to Li Guangtu and Li Honghe in Lin Fengting's impression. But the spirit was exactly the same, so Lin Fengting confirmed his identity at first sight. It's a unique skill he created by himself. It is divided into 9 words: kill, kill, shadow, destroy, flash, split, restrict, defend, and escape. It's really extraordinary. Whether it's the pattern, momentum, or boldness, it has the atmosphere of entering the invincible realm. From the perspective of a killer, the Buddhist incantation of 9 words can be said to be an impeccable unique skill. But I guess it can't be completely perfected until he really enters the invincible realm. Wang Tianzong looked at Tribulation calmly through the night, and the meaning in his eyes was difficult to understand. You should have seen this person. He used to be called Situ Wanjie, but now he's just Tribulation. He's the Lord of Shadow in the Dark World. He's famous. Situ Wanjie? Lin Fengting's eyes were in a trance, and a young man he saw beside Li Guangtu subconsciously emerged in his mind. That handsome and silent young man. It's him, Lin Fengting sighed softly. How did he become like this? He's the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State and even in the Dark World. Why do you have so many emotions? Wang Tianzong looked helpless. The strongest assassin? Lin Fengting chuckled and said, I believe he's the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State, but not in the Dark World, right? Who's the #1 killer in the Dark World now? Although the pronunciation is similar to Tribulation, it's not the same person. It seems that his code name is Evil, right? He's on the holy list. He's the strongest assassin in the Dark World today. Wang Tianzong smiled and didn't comment. Let's take a closer look. Let's see how the little guy who followed my second brother back then is, and how my second brother's son is. Lin Fengting smiled and took a step forward. Dozens of meters away. Li Tianlan didn't notice it. Tribulation, who was talking to Li Tianlan, suddenly turned around. His eyes were like lightning, shooting straight at Lin Fengting. There was nothing in his sight. Tribulation's eyes suddenly became sharper. He instinctively protected Li Tianlan behind him and took a step forward. For almost invisible shadows instantly appeared in 4 directions: east, west, south, and north. His eyes narrowed, and his deep and hoarse voice, like that of death, echoed in the jungle in an instant, layer upon layer. 2 arm knives stretched out directly from his cuffs. Before he finished a word, the forest in the courtyard hundreds of meters away suddenly became still. The sound of the wind disappeared. The forest that was originally full of vitality suddenly seemed to have turned into a lifelike but extremely pale landscape painting. Only the pure dark and cold killing intent was surging. Everything happened in an instant. In less than half a second, the arm knives in Tribulation's hands had suddenly sounded, and he slashed forward. Destroy. Destroy the mortals. Destroy the thunder invincible. Destroy all the gods and Buddhas. The air within a radius of hundreds of meters twisted crazily like never before. The forest, which was as quiet as a painting half a second ago, was instantly torn apart under the extreme killing intent. The air overlapped and spread suddenly. Tribulation had arm knives in his hands. The 4 shadows that occupied the 4 directions also had arm knives in their hands. As Tribulation moved, the arm knives in his hands did not move, but the arm knives in the hands of the 4 shadows were instantly thrown out. The target was clear, and they rushed directly to Lin Fengting's position. There was no wind or rain. Only the pure and violent killing intent rushed to Lin Fengting in the extremely twisted air, which seemed slow but was actually fast. The sky was high, and the ocean was vast. It was the most fierce and resolute killing intent that filled the world. It was complete madness. The twisted air whistled past. In an instant, with Tribulation as the center, the forest within a radius of hundreds of meters collapsed. Countless broken trunks and leaves were mixed in the air and turned into powder. There was a large, dazzling blank space in the forest. Tribulation's face was pale. This move obviously consumed a lot of his energy, but he still stood where he was and observed around motionlessly. His eyes grew colder and colder. It was calm in the forest. Tribulation narrowed his eyes and pulled Li Tianlan. A shadow appeared in his original position without any warning, and he had already taken Li Tianlan hundreds of meters away. The extremely twisted air finally eased a little. Lin Fengting and Wang Tianzong appeared quietly hundreds of meters away. They looked at each other and saw solemnity and seriousness in each other's eyes. This man, Lin Fengting was silent for a while and finally said, "Is he really the teenager who followed my second brother? Is he Sidu Cangyue's younger brother?" Wang Tianzong nodded silently. He knew the title of the strongest assassin in Zhongzhou State, but the power of the move just now was somewhat beyond his expectation. Obviously, this unusual madman had been one step closer to this mysterious realm after failing to break through to the invincible realm. How far was he from the real invincible realm? In front of him was the end of the chi-controlling realm. Was there really a way? I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Lin Fengting took a deep breath and shook his head. There was a misunderstanding tonight. Who could have thought that the brat was so strong? If Tribulation enters the invincible realm in the future, given time, his final achievement may not be lower than yours and mine. This brat. He has no chance. Wang Tianzong said calmly. What? Lin Fengting looked stunned. Tribulation? Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said, he seems to be 38 years old this year. If he takes the ordinary path, he may have a chance to fight for the last time. But from the chi-controlling realm to the invincible realm, there is not enough time. There may not be a way for him to go. Lin Fengting suddenly fell silent. 38 years old. Entering the invincible realm directly from the chi-controlling realm. This was an unprecedented road of martial arts. It was not impossible to succeed. But did Tribulation really have time? The peak state of a martial artist was before the age of 40. Most of the real geniuses could enter the thunder-shocking realm before the age of 40. Among these geniuses, there were a few really amazing people who could enter the invincible realm at the age of 36 or 37. After the age of 40, the physical state might be maintained for a long time. But at this age, it was almost impossible to move forward on martial arts, even half a step. Tribulation was 38 years old. If he could not enter the invincible realm in the remaining 2 years, the corners of Lin Fengting's mouth moved. He thought of the quiet and handsome young man who followed his second brother many years ago. Thinking of the shocking blow with soaring murderous intent tonight, he felt a little suffocated for no reason. If such a person failed, it seemed to be a sad song for martial arts and all the assassins in the dark world, right? Is there no other way? Lin Fengting asked subconsciously. Yes. Wang Tianzong said calmly, but it's almost the same as nothing. And even if there are conditions, the hope of his success will not be too big. What conditions? Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows and asked. That's something like a legend. The martial arts stone, also known as the Wall of Luck. Wang Tianzong shook his head and looked at Lin Fengting, who looked confused as if he was listening to a book from heaven. He continued, it's also called the Imperial Jade Seal. Chapter 122. For the first time, Li Tianlan really saw the speed of Tribulation, the most powerful assassin in Zhongzhou State. As the only person with double wind veins in hundreds of years, and his martial arts was an unprecedented road from the chi-controlling realm to the invincible realm, coupled with the shadow formula, Tribulation was simply a super assassin who specialized in breaking the balance. In the dark, he took Li Tianlan forward and backward, full of a sense of extreme violence and swiftness. The wind and the clouds were gone, like a white colt passing through a crack. Being pulled back by Tribulation, Li Tianlan was in a trance and even felt suffocated. That was not the deterrence brought by absolute power, but the oppression caused by extreme speed. It was clear and obvious, making people nervous almost instinctively. Some things in front of him seemed to have completely disappeared. In the woods. In the night. Even Tribulation had turned into a shadow of nothingness and then disappeared without a trace. There was only the sound of the fierce wind whistling wildly all over the world. He seemed to stand still, but the fierce and violent wind kept whistling in his ears, suppressing all his perceptions. Li Tianlan's consciousness was clearer than ever, but his perception was blurred. He couldn't tell forward or backward, and he couldn't tell the passage of time. The strong wind blew, and the branches and leaves in the woods wilted. There seemed to be a storm sweeping through the whole woods, like a knife chopping forward. All the obstacles were swept into the sky in the storm, and then smashed to pieces. There seemed to be a flash of light in front of him, and then it became dark again. The world was silent. The sound of the wind suddenly disappeared. Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses in an extreme trance, only to find that he was standing outside the dormitory. Martial uncle, Li Tianlan had already guessed all this, so he didn't feel puzzled and shouted subconsciously. It's okay. Tribulation's voice seemed to be a little weak, and the hoarseness and low in his tone faded a little. Let's call it a night. Sleep more and continue tomorrow. Li Tianlan finally couldn't help his curiosity and took the initiative to ask, Martial uncle, was someone watching us in the dark just now? Li Tianlan now had all the 3 most precious constitutions in the dark world. Although his martial arts had been recultivated, his perception had not regressed. He had a sensitivity far beyond his current realm to everything around him. But even so, Li Tianlan didn't notice anything unusual just now. This could only mean that the realm of the person in the dark was far beyond his current imagination. Invincible realm? Invincible in the invincible realm? 2 people. After a moment of silence, Tribulation said faintly, but they don't mean us any harm. At least in the Sky Academy, they have no intention of attacking us. But I can't stay in that place for too long. Next time, I'll change to another place. I'll find an empty training ground and continue practicing the 9 words incantation. Li Tianlan nodded but showed it to the shadow. Tribulation's figure had disappeared without a trace. Li Tianlan swiped his card and entered the room. Looking at his watch, he found it was nearly 5 o'clock in the morning. He hesitated for a moment and finally walked into the bedroom. A faint fragrance floated in the bedroom, stirring one's mind. Wang Yuetong kicked the quilt again. Her fair and tender body seemed to be suffused with an enchanting luster in the dark. It was indistinct, but the visual impact was great. Sleep naked. This was not Wang Yuetong's habit, but it was Li Tianlan's request. Whether it was in front of Qin Weibai or Wang Yuetong, Li Tianlan seemed to be domineering in bed, which made the two goddesses feel wronged and enjoyed at the same time. Now he was living with Wang Yuetong openly. Every night after they went to bed, he would strip the little princess naked and hold her in his arms. That feeling was indescribably comfortable. At first, the little princess was not used to it and wanted to disobey. As a result, after Li Tianlan tore 2 sets of expensive sexy silk underwear, she could only let him do as he pleased. But these were nothing. What Wang Yuetong couldn't stand most was that Li Tianlan would strip her naked every night. The two of them would share a quilt and rest on the long pillow that Wang Yuetong deliberately selected, but he would do nothing. Such behavior was really worse than a beast. Whether Li Tianlan had no time or something else, the little princess was not going to accept any explanation from Li Tianlan. So for several days Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with more and more resentment and melancholy. Li Tianlan smiled and lowered his head to kiss Wang Yuetong's face. Then he got up and sat on the bed. Instead of resting, he began to meditate. Any martial arts, no matter how unconventional and bizarre it was, in the final analysis, was nothing more than attaching equal importance to realm and unique skills. Now that he had 2 hours less time to practice unique skills, Li Tianlan didn't want to waste it, so he simply used it in meditation as a rest. In 3 years, from the Qi-controlling realm to the peak of the fire-flaming realm, he had crossed 3 pseudo-invincible realms in a row, and he had thoroughly grasped the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. This was the goal Li Tianlan set for himself. Once this goal was achieved, he wouldn't have too many opponents under the invincible realm even without entering the thunder-shocking realm. He would also have the formal qualification to play in the general trend of Zhongzhou state. Time was pressing, and Li Tianlan had to fight desperately. The darkness on the horizon gradually brightened. In extreme concentration, Li Tianlan felt someone kissing him on the face. He opened his eyes and saw Wang Yuetong's beautiful face in front of him. She said with a smile, "Good morning, senior brother. Why are you back so early today?" "I didn't gain much, so I didn't waste time and came back to meditate." Li Tianlan shook his head casually and touched Wang Yuetong's hair. He didn't tell her what he had encountered in the woods not long ago, but calmly said, "Is today the sniping class?" Wang Yuetong nodded, picked up her underwear and put it on. She giggled and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I have an uncle who is in charge of this class. Even if you fail, I won't deduct your credits. Senior brother is really unlucky. It's easy to play with a gun. I'll teach you another day." Li Tianlan gave a wry smile and nodded. The only thing he hadn't learned since he was a child was to play with a gun. There were many guns in the border camp, but bullets were quite expensive. No matter how much his grandfather wanted him to stand out, he was unwilling to use precious bullets to cultivate his marksmanship. As for blank bullets, they were even rarer than live bullets. Li Tianlan had never seen blank bullets since he was a child. In yesterday's firearms control course, because it was the first class, the course was relatively simple. Instructor Wang Xiaojia talked about some theories about firearms. For most of the students, these were the same old stuff. After the theory, there was a lot more, mainly pistols and assault rifles. Li Tianlan's results in the practice of these 2 kinds of firearms could be described as a mess. Not only did he fail, but he was also the only one among the 50 students who failed in the firearms control course. The instructor of the firearms control class, Wang Xiaojia, was also Gu Yunxia's confidant, but he didn't deliberately embarrass Li Tianlan. He just deducted 1 credit from him, and Li Tianlan was willing to deduct it. Wang Yuetong, who won the first place in the firearms control class, also got a reward of 8 credits. It seemed to be a very fair class, and the instructor didn't take any position. This kind of environment was undoubtedly Li Tianlan's favorite. He stood up from the bed, moved his body, and suddenly asked, "Is the headmaster back?" Zhuang Huayang had not come back since he went to Yuzhou a few days ago. Although the news from Yuzhou was not bad for Zhuang Huayang, Li Tianlan always felt a little uneasy if he didn't return to the Sky Academy. He killed Gu Changjiang. If Zhuang Huayang was involved in this matter, it was definitely not a situation Li Tianlan wanted to see. Wang Yuetong whispered, "I called second uncle yesterday." Second uncle said that the president held another meeting of the decision-making committee yesterday, specifically for the Sky Academy. There may be some personnel changes in the Sky Academy. He asked you to pay attention to some things. My father was also invited to the meeting of the decision-making committee, but he was too lazy to go, so he declined. Li Tianlan chuckled. There were personnel changes in the Sky Academy, but it was Wang Xiaoyao who asked him to pay attention to some things. This was really interesting. He might be just an ant in Wang Tianzong's eyes. But in Wang Xiaoyao's eyes, he was an out-and-out rival in love. From this point of view, Wang Xiaoyao had more reason to hate him than anyone in the Wang family of Beihai. This reminder might not be in good faith. "Let's eat first." Li Tianlan got out of bed and said casually. No matter what the so-called changes in the Sky Academy meant, Li Tianlan didn't intend to think too much about it. These things were not what he could think about now. Even if he had an idea, it wouldn't affect anything. His phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan was stunned and looked at the number. It turned out to be Dongcheng Qiuqi, who hadn't taken the initiative to contact him since he returned to Huding. He narrowed his eyes slightly, picked up the phone, and called Sister Qiuqi with a smile. At the same time, the figure of Zhuang Huayang, the headmaster of the Sky Academy, appeared on the river opposite the academy. Beside him, a young man and a young woman followed in silence. The man was strong and burly, like a giant god, full of pressure. The woman was extremely beautiful, but her every move revealed a kind of indifferent and obvious dangerous aura, looking strange and cold. The first disciple of Jade Pool, giant god Su Chu. By Yu Ming, the nominal disciple of Jade Pool. At the same time, a transfer order from Kunlun City also appeared on the desks of the headmaster's office, the vice headmaster's office, the teaching office, and the political department of the Sky Academy. Yi Fengqing, the director of the political department of the Sky Academy, was transferred to the director of the Special Operations Bureau of Huading and enjoyed the treatment of a governor. Tribulation, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy and the leader of the assassination course group, served as the director of the political department and concurrently served as the leader of the assassination course group. By Yu Ming, the deputy commander of the 2nd Reconnaissance Brigade of the Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Praetorian Corps, was transferred to the Sky Academy and served as the leader of the actual combat course group. Among the personnel transfers one after another, the last personnel appointment was a great surprise, which also showed that Kunlun City still didn't give up on the Sky Academy. Lu Shuyuan, the director of the Curtain Intelligence Department of Huading, joined the Sky Academy and served as the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. At the same time, as the world's largest country, Zhongzhou State issued a statement to the entire dark world. June 15th. On the day of the battle between the master of Samsara Palace and the governor of Kunlun City, Zhongzhou State would fully respect the opinions of the two parties, but it also suggested that the two parties should make peace and not go too far. On June 15th, the Sky Academy would be open to the public for one day. At that time, representatives of the superpowers were also welcome to come to the Sky Academy to watch the battle, and the government of Zhongzhou State would send special people to pick them up. Special people would be sent to pick them up. Just this sentence alone showed the euphemistic and strong attitude of Zhongzhou State. The news that Zhongzhou State welcomed representatives of the major dark forces to come to the Sky Academy to watch the battle had different meanings in different people's minds. People who didn't understand the situation of Zhongzhou State instinctively thought that Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State and the fourth on the world divine list, had already won the battle. He wanted to increase the influence of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in the dark world by defeating or even killing the master of Samsara Palace. But only people who really understood the delicate situation of Zhongzhou State knew. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.